Yes. Agreed.
Hey, oh my goodness.
Recording in progress.
That's about it.
Are we connected?
Can you all hear us online? Just, thank you. Okay.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Beth Bray. I'm the chair of the board, and we are going to call this meeting to order. Before we jump in, we have a very full agenda today, but I want to recognize our newest member of the board, Dr. Ryan Donlin, who has been appointed by Senate President Bray, and we're so happy to have you. Welcome to the board. Thank you for your service. Yes, we can clap. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
We have a really full agenda today. We have 3 members of the board present online. I'm going to do a very quick roll call, and then we will jump into what is a full agenda. We're going to be visiting 7 schools today, renewals for 7. So let's jump right in. Let me go ahead and take roll. I need everyone to give me a verbal affirmation that you are present for the record. So Board Member Kramer is not here. She will not be here today. Board Member Hawkins. Could you just come off mute? I'm sorry, we need a
Yes.
verbal. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Board Member Jositis.
Present.
Thank you. Board Member Schultz is here. Board Member Green.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Donlin.
Here.
Hey, and I am Board Chair Bray. I'm here as well. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I want to turn it over to our director to get us started. James, thank you so much for all of the preparation that the staff put into today's meeting. Let me turn it to you. What's that?
4 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. The board has received the minutes from our last meeting in May. Are there any questions for the staff regarding the minutes, any comments or corrections? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve the May minutes. So moved. Okay, and any second?
Second.
All in favor? Do I have to do a roll?
You have to do roll for
Oh,
everything.
Lord. Okay, one by one, we're going to ask for your approval of the minutes. I approve. Board Member Hawkins,
Approve.
Board Member Jositis,
Approve.
Board Member Schultz. Approve. Okay, Board Member Green
Approve.
and Board Member Donlin.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. And just for your reference, Dr. Donlin, we have to do an individual roll call vote for every item because we are meeting virtually. So it's important that we get your individual vote on every matter that we discuss today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So with that, I will turn it over to James Bentley, our Executive Director.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So I'm just going to jump right into it. As the chair said, we have a full day today. We're going to start with 2 Excel centers, one from Goodwill Education Initiatives and one from Goodwill Leads. The first is the Excel Center in Noblesville. Now, given how many applications we have, I am going to skip my typical reading of the recommendation and just sort of summarize it a little bit. What we as staff are recommending, they originally approved in 2015. They received a 5-year renewal in 2020, and we are actually recommending approval for a 15-year renewal. And let me pause for 1 second to sort of talk a little bit about where we sort of landed on the renewal stuff. As you know, and you guys have sat through a couple of my memos on this, about we started out with a 5-year term, then the legislature bumped it to a 7-year term, and then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they bumped to a 15-year maximum term. So now we have flexibility. That means anywhere between 1 and 15, we can use as a term for a charter. Historically, and again, you all have heard me say this before, we've always argued that 5-year term is too short really to do anything with a new school because you only have 4 years of data maybe. And for new schools, sometimes it's even less, depending on what grade spans they start with. So we are, and it's not relevant here, but it's relevant to the discussion. We are going to start to recommend 7 years for new schools, feeling that that gives us more time. And seems to be sort of a nice balance. We're obviously not saying we're going to authorize a new school for 15 years, but 7 years gives us 6 years of data. So that's enough to maybe start getting growth and some other things, which we have not been able to do. I think we've had schools come up here for 5-year where we've had 0 data. I think actually Ace Prep had no data, which makes it difficult. So 7 years for new schools, 10 years for schools in first renewal. So you've been through 5 or 7 years. So we're going to recommend you for 10 years for your first renewal and then 15 years for second renewal. Under the theory that by the time you're coming at us for second renewal, you've been with us for a minimum of 10 years, possibly more if we start to implement this. And it doesn't really make sense at that point to, you've already been approved once and then reapproved twice to have you come back, every 7 or 5 years to go through the whole thing again. And again, I will say from our perspective as staff, it's sort of irrelevant. And I know, again, broken record here because we monitor you all the time anyway. And most of the time, whenever there are issues, they typically come up long before we get to a renewal stage and we're either resolved or we come to the board early to, for some sort of decision on that school. So that's the background on why we're recommending 15 for Noblesville. As you guys recall, we did do our first 15-year renewals. I believe either it was 1 meeting or 2 meetings. I think it was the last renewal meeting. So there's precedent for it. And that's a recommendation for Noblesville and actually for Leeds, but we can get to them in a second. So
Hey,
again,
James,
yes,
could I ask a quick question? Could
Sure.
you just talk just a couple seconds about what the staff does to ensure that the schools are
Yeah.
in line with standards?
Sure. So we have a new sort of dashboard that we use, which is a live web-based sort of dashboard in which we import all available educational data and all financial data that is provided by the schools. And they're required to submit a budget, quarterly reports, and a revised budget if their enrollment changes sufficiently. All of this stuff gets imported into this dashboard, which we then use to sort of monitor trends. We look at enrollment, not quite weekly, but now that it's sort of live, with the new, the way that they've integrated the SISs with the DOE systems, we can look at it weekly or monthly. So we track enrollment. It's from financial. We track their financial. We review their financials every time a quarterly report is submitted. And then, as I said, we review academic data when it's available. Now, the difficulty with the academic data is that's not live. I mean, we get it when it's when DOE releases it. We have access to some school level data, but we really only use it for sort of accountability purposes when it's scrubbed and reconciled and all that, and the DOE does that. So while we do have conversations with schools are sort of ongoing about academic performance, typically that's an end of the year thing. The financial monitoring is ongoing. And of course, if there are issues that arise, we get notified from DOE, or say there's a due process complaint or something like that. Those things come as they come. And they're really only an issue if it's a sort of a structural evidence that there's a structural problem with the school, that there's a serious deficiency in a program rather than a one-off complaint. So those are a lot of the reasons, a lot of the ways that there are other ways too. I mean, we are constantly talking to schools and, we're in the schools too on occasion. So as I said, as you guys know, I mean, for example, Indy STEAM, that was an ongoing process where we were heavily involved with them for a year prior to bringing that to you all. So it's sort of on an as needed basis, but the base level is we keep a pretty close eye on how schools are performing.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, as you can see, we have the data here on Noblesville, their academic performance. We're still working on our accountability system for adult high schools. We made some progress, but they certainly lack the more extensive academic data that we have for our K-12 schools. But number of graduates, total 440 since they opened, 97.8 earning a core 40, 100% earning college credits or approved industry certs. They've met or exceeded standards on our sort of new adult high school metric, which is graduation to enrollment percentage. They exceeded standard in each of the last 5 years for CCR percentage. So those are our like academic metrics for adult high schools currently. You can read more about the school in the academic section, and then the studies that they've done internally about the actual benefits of an Excel Center education in the 2017 study and the 2021 Leo study. Financially, we really have no concerns. The GEI, as you know, has many schools and does a really good job of supporting those schools when they need it, and providing whether it's facilities or whatever services they particularly need. They've been very, very good at that, and have been they're a very solid network. We'll talk more about the network thing in a minute, because all of the schools that we're reviewing today are network schools, which sort of complicates the financials a little bit. But Noblesville is not a concern either at the school level or at the network level. The only sort of outstanding question, as you can see, is the facility. They're currently located at the Ivy Tech Community College campus, and they're located there for the next year at least. But they can talk to you a little bit more about that if that's a concern. And with that, I will say that our staff recommends a renewal of Excel Noblesville for 15 years.
Great. Thank you very much, James. So at this point, we would welcome any representatives from Excel Center Noblesville to come up to the podium. I would ask that you introduce yourself and share your role within the school. We have the staff recommendations of a renewal of 15 years. So if you want to add any additional comments, that would be great. Please just limit your comments to 10 minutes or less so we can keep moving. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is Katie Bustamante, and I'm the Vice President of Education for Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. I am very excited. Thank you for having me here today. I'm representing the Excel Center Noblesville, and then I will turn it over in a little bit to our school director, Dr. Steve Dillon. Really quickly, I did want to introduce our team in the room. Just so you know, we've got Betsy Delgado. She's our Senior Vice President and Chief Mission Education Officer. Corey Emery, our Senior Director. Dr. Steve Dillon, he is our School Director at Noblesville. Miriam Henry, Regional Director, Brandon Marks, Regional Director, and Lynn Gregg, Senior Director of Finance. So thank you, Madam Chairman and Board, for having us here today. I want to just share a little bit about the Excel Center network and can speak a little bit to the facility before throwing it over to Steve. So the Excel Center opened first in 2010 with one high school here in Indianapolis, with the key focus on serving adults who need access to a high school diploma to be able to access economic self-sufficiency. Since then, Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana has grown to 18 Excel Centers in our territory, 24 across Indiana with our partners, our other Goodwill partners across the state, and 47 Excel Centers across the country. Here in Central and Southern Indiana, we have graduated over 8,600 Hoosiers since 2010. The Excel Center operates with core model elements that you'll see in all of our schools that support adult learners, both towards graduation and post-secondary success. Those include a rigorous secondary education that meets the needs of students through 5 8-week terms. So it's at an accelerated rate, which is really meant to maximize credit earning potential for students. Additionally, all Excel Centers focus on barrier removal and asset building. So you'll see childcare facilities in all of our Excel Centers, as well as transportation support. Additionally, all of our students have a life coach who helps not only with graduation planning, but also barrier removal and plans for after they graduate. We also have a keen focus on college and career readiness, where students earn either dual credit or industry recognized certifications Last year, of all of our graduates in Central and Southern Indiana, 99% earned either dual credit or a industry recognized certification. And then the last core model element I'll speak to is that we are really focused on being data-driven and continuous improvement. So as part of that, we have a partnership with the Lab for Economic Opportunities out of Notre Dame to continue to look at our outcomes and make sure that we are upholding our model to serve the community. And a couple of notes I wanted to share there were that our graduates earn 39% more than their peers 5 years after graduation. Our graduates are more likely to be employed than their peers in sectors like healthcare, education, and advanced manufacturing. And what we're really proud of is that we have found that that evidence is true across all demographics, so it's equitable. And then really quickly to the facility conversation, we love our partners at Ivy Tech, where we are currently located, and we plan to stay there at least one more year. They are growing some of their programs, which we're very excited about, and we are growing. And so both of those needs are kind of having us look to some other facilities in the area that we've been working with as we continue to grow and they continue to grow. So with that, I will pass it to Dr. Dillon.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. Cannot believe 10 years has gone by. It's amazing. It has been a very, very productive 10 years. I was lucky enough to retire for 2 days from public education. And I was lucky enough to start the Noblesville Excel Center. And so as I look back at those 10 years, the first couple of years were rough, finding students, growing our school, and now to be in a position where we're outgrowing the space is absolutely amazing. So I do appreciate that. I wanted to share that with you. I'm a history teacher by profession. Numbers are not my thing normally. I'm lucky that I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that do love numbers. My thing is culture in the building. But I can tell you that what I'm getting ready to share with you is a result of our positive culture. Okay, so I have some numbers for you. Okay, average age of our students is 29. 61% of our students have school-age children of their own. 65% of our students are single. 65% female, 35% male, 62% are minorities. We also have 79% of our graduates employed or in college within 12 months after graduation. 69% of our grads are employed within 12 months after graduation. 70% of those grads are employed working in career-driven industries such as healthcare, manufacturing, etc. Not food, retail, things like that. So those are great numbers. Now here's some other numbers for you, okay? 250 graduates during the last 5 years. And we should have 500 this year. We're very excited about that. We're planning a 10-year anniversary party. We're going to invite back grads in the spring and do some celebration, okay? Over the last 5 years, more than 95% of our graduates have earned either an industry recognized certification or college credits. 10,000 credits have been earned by more than 750 students in the last 5 years. Those are core 40 credits. Last year, we were invited by Ivy Tech to be part of the Indiana College Core Program. We were very excited about that. Just to give you some background on that real fast, that is the opportunity for students to earn up to 10 dual college credit classes, which equals the first year of college, while they're earning their Core 40 diploma. Very excited to be part of that. Last year, we had 3 grads in our first year complete all 10, but we had 82 students earn 638 college credits for a value of $108,000. That's an amazing accomplishment. Our partnerships, we have a very strong partnership with all the local high schools. They view us as strong partners, not as someone trying to take their students. We all cooperate together with that. We have a partnership with local food bank, and we have a food bank in our building that we provide our students who have food insecurity. And of course, our strong partnership with Ivy Tech. We're very excited about that. We're sad to leave, we understand, but we're growing, they're growing. Those are both positive things. And we're going to stay close in the neighborhood, I hope, so that we can still be good partners. So I have one other thing to talk about. I like to share stories about my students. I have one in particular that I wanted to share today. Jocelyn was a student who was born in Puerto Rico. Okay. She was raised in Los Angeles, California. She grew up in South Central LA, which was not a very good neighborhood. At 15, she found herself pregnant. She dropped out of school to take care of her child. She struggled to return to school because there were no programs that allowed young mothers to go back to school at that time. And she faced some criticism from her friends and her teachers for what she had done. At home, life was not easy. Home was filled full of domestic violence, and her parents kicked her out of the house. She moved in with a boyfriend that turned out to be abusive. Finally, at age 41, Jocelyn is a mother, a grandmother, and became a graduate of the Excel Center. She is a medical interpreter. She's always very excited when she gets to be in a delivery and help out with the interpreting. She always calls us and sends us pictures and things like that. But now she's also working for BMO in the banking industry. So that is just one of hundreds of success stories that I would wanted to share with you guys today. Be happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we will shift to Q&A with members of the board. Let me start with the members of the board who are here in the room. And I just want to reiterate to all of my friends on the board, this is not a moment for speeches or long-winded soliloquies on our part. We are just engaging in Q&A, and any questions you have or any lack of clarity from reviewing the documents, I would encourage you to ask any questions now. So let me open it up to the board members in the room. Questions from either of you?
I do. I have one question. It's a pleasure to
Please, go
meet you. My name is Anna. In the materials that were prepared for us today, it specifically called out that you guys were focusing on attendance, and it mentioned that there was a 10% attendance growth, but I'd be curious to know where you started, what the goal is, and what is working to get you there.
It's challenging to get adults to come to school every day. They're not
Mhm.
required by law. Plus, they have all those adulting things they have to do, like work.
Can you stand closer to the microphone, please?
I sure can. Thank you. It's a challenge when you have adults that don't have to come to school by law. They're volunteering to do that. Plus, they have those adulting things in their life, work, family, things like that. So we're working very hard to increase students that we're making it a mission of ours to have students take more than one class and to be there 4 days a week. And so it's a real mission for us. We're making sure that we talk with those students during orientations, make sure that we emphasize that. We all call them if they don't show up, not to get mad at them for not being there, but saying, what can we do to help you? Transportation is an issue in Hamilton County. We do help with transportation as much as we can. We do some ride sharing with other students. We also have a Hamilton County Express that does help some of our students. And so that sometimes is one of the issues for attendance not being as good.
What are your numbers?
Our
In
numbers
ter-
currently
terms of
enrollment.
your, no, in terms of your attendance numbers.
Oh, our attendance
percentages.
numbers. 70%. There you go. Thanks. Off the top of my head. I told you the numbers.
It's all right. It's all right.
You know.
It called it out in here, so I wanted to
Sidekick here.
celebrate
They can help me
it.
out, so.
That's fine. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Any questions?
Yes, just two. Thank you so much for the presentation. Education is an opportunity for the whole family, and I was inspired with your providing childcare. How does childcare for those who avail themselves of your school, how does that inform your decision of a new facility?
So as an Excel Center, that's one of the things that we make sure is built into every Excel Center. So you do have to have, we've made a commitment that we must have on-site childcare. And so as we're thinking about our facilities, we do factor that into the square footages and lease rates and that sort of thing. So it's very crucial that we have plenty of space for the kiddos. And so we're, and that we're following all the codes for working with the little ones.
Are you currently meeting demand
Say that again.
for childcare?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes,
wonderful.
yes.
And the second question, I understand how you measure credentials, completion, and career acquisition. How do you measure good teaching?
Oh. I will stop you. It's okay. I have a lead teacher on staff. His job is to evaluate our teachers and their teaching. Right now, for example, we are going through training to help our multilingual students learn better in our schools. Those skills are good for all students, not just for multilingual learners. And so I was in the teachers meeting last night because I'm currently also a teacher on the staff. So he comes in and evaluates me. But in our teachers meeting last night, we talked about the things that we will be looking for now this term as he comes in to observe classes on those skills that we're learning to help our students learn better. So that evaluation system goes on all year, and then teachers get written feedback back from the lead teacher and myself.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Let me turn to the board members who are present by Zoom. Any questions from any of the members of the board online?
I just had a question about the childcare. We struggle with childcare. I'm at Ivy Tech up north, but how do you measure how many people use your childcare? That's really the question. How many people use it? How does it work? They sign up, it's drop-in or it's a commitment? How does that work?
That's a great question. It is a drop-in center. Students must be in the building taking classes to take part of that program. I have 2 employees in that part of my building. One has a bachelor's degree in early childhood. So that's a really plus for us that she has brought that to the table. And so we will have the answer to your question is how many use it depends on how many students, how many children the students have each term. And again, back to the attendance question, how often they attend school. But we average usually around 12, 15 students as the maximum number that would be in that program. It is free to our students, so there's no commitment on their part, and they use it as they need it.
Thanks.
And I was just encouraged to remind us all that we never turn a child away, ever.
What's the capacity you have?
The capacity would be around 15, I think. We have in the past, because of large numbers, we've slipped an extra staff member, including myself, down to the child care center to help out. I'm really good with diapers when I need to be, but it's not my favorite thing to do, but I will go down and do that. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, I'm seeing no further questions. So thank you very much. You may be seated. At this point, we will proceed to a vote. The staff have recommended a full 15-year charter renewal for the Excel Center, Noblesville. James, anything to add before we take a vote?
Nope.
Okay, I will accept a motion and a second to accept staff recommendations and renew this charter for 15 years. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Great. I have a motion and we'll consider Mr. Jositis as a second, and I will do a roll call vote. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Okay, Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I too am a yes. So congratulations to Excel Center Noblesville. Okay, we are going to transition over to the Excel Center South Bend. So if you need to step out, please do so quietly. Just encourage you to make that transition with us. We're going to try to catch up on some time. So our next school that we'll be considering is also an Excel Center. This is the Excel Center South Bend. Staff are recommending a full 15-year charter renewal for the Excel Center South Bend, and I will turn it over to James to
Thank
present
you.
the staff recommendations.
Thank you. As you all know, or maybe our new board member, Goodwill Leeds has a relationship with Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana to operate Excel centers in the northern part of Indiana. So there are several Excel centers located up there that are operated by Goodwill Leeds, which is a separate entity than
Goodwill.
It's complicated because there are multiple entities involved, right? Goodwill Education Initiatives, Goodwill Central South America, Goodwill Leeds, Goodwill Michiana. At any rate, it is part of a separate Goodwill network up there. So they're not related other than the use of the Excel Center model, which was developed by Central and South. So just to sort of clarify that. So Excel South Bend was actually the first Excel Center opened by Goodwill Leeds in 2015, 2016. They were renewed in 2020 for 5 years. And as this is their second renewal request, we are recommending a 15-year renewal. They, as I said, are the flagship of the Goodwill Leeds Excel network. They have graduated 300 students, 100% of the 24 graduates earning a core 40, 96 earning college credit, 96% earning college credits or an approved industry certification. Similarly, they met or exceeded standard in their graduation to enrollment percentage. Every year since 2019. And they exceeded standard in each of the last 5 years for CCR percentage. So again, it's the same metrics that we use for the Excel Center in Noblesville. They are performing similarly. It seems like the graduation to enrollment data is slipping down a little in 2024, but we don't actually have the final grad data yet. So I didn't really want to put that in there for as an actual figure because we don't really know what it is. So that's, again, you can see they talk about the sort of struggles that the schools had in the last 5 years, including the enrollment, talking about trying to get students to attend, trying to build enrollment back up. Their enrollment is actually currently pretty good. I think it's at last I heard it was at 290 and their max is 300. So they are near their max for enrollment. As I said, they're the flagship school of the 4 adult high schools operated by Goodwill Leeds, which was formed by Goodwill Industries in Michiana. The relationship is somewhat similar. Michiana provides employees and various other services to Leeds, and then Leeds, of course, operates the schools. Similarly, Michiana provides financial support for Leeds. The way that, as I said in a little memo that at the beginning of the recommendations talking about network financing, when we review a school that's part of a network, we review both the school and the network. In this case, you review South Bend on its own, they have pretty good financial state. If you look at we have the specifics in here, but their total assets and their change in net assets and net asset position are positive and fairly solid as an individual school. Leeds, however, is operating 4 schools, and Leeds has been operating in the red for a few years, but that, of course, is sort of natural when you're opening a bunch of new schools. As long as we feel comfortable that it's not a downward trend, we tend to give them a few years to get things leveled out as they open these schools and build enrollment up and all of that. And what I will say, so we don't have audited data for 2024 for the networks, but I did have a lot of conversations with a lot of financial folks over the last couple of weeks. And what I was told is that the unaudited data has Leeds actually showing its first profit in 2024. Very, very small, but still that's better than where we were before. So the trends are positive for Leeds. The other thing that the Goodwill networks have is the support of the mother organization. And as you saw in your board packet, there was a letter of support from Michiana, which acts as a backstop should things go south, should they need some financial support. And as we've discussed before with the Goodwill networks, this is mission for them. And so, our philosophy on this sort of financial support is that, with a letter of support from this established organization, which is very fiscally secure, that is enough for us. At this point, if the network decides that one or more of the schools is no longer financially sustainable, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The big fear from us as a staff is having a school shut down in a non-orderly manner. Now, we all know schools shut down periodically. I'm not saying South Bend's going to, it's in great shape. But what I'm saying is, generally speaking, when we look at the financials, what we're trying to avoid is a situation where a school runs out of money mid-year. That is obviously the worst possible outcome. With Goodwill Leads, we speak to them a lot. We've never really had a conversation where we're concerned about the financial status of the schools. However, the conversation would be had if it was an issue. We have no concerns about South Bend's financial status. Goodwill Leads is trending upward, and we have the support of Michiana. So we really don't have any financial concerns at this point. Obviously, if something comes up, we'll deal with it. But we don't have any financial concerns. They've got a pretty good level of community support, and they'll talk to you about that with South Bend Community School Corporation. That's it. And in the area of concerns, we say is that we note that the Goodwill Michiana note. So we are recommending Excel South Bend for a full 15-year renewal with them meeting standard in all 3 areas. And with that, I will stop talking.
Great, thank you. I would invite the representatives from Excel Center South Bend to come on up. And just like the group before you, I'd ask that you just limit your comments to 10 minutes, and then we'll jump into Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good morning. My name is Dr. Chris Alber and I'm the superintendent of the Michiana Excel Centers. I want to thank all of you for your time this morning, both online and in person, as you consider our application. I wanted to introduce our team with us today. We have our Leads Board President, Tony Allison. We have our President and CEO, Debbie Coble, who's also a Leads Board member. We have our CFO, Shire Kish. We also have our Elkhart Director here, Katie Lowe. And I'll introduce Mrs. LaPlace here in a second. I just wanted to thank you all and just make sure you all understand that this is mission-based, as Mr. Bentley already articulated. We're very excited to serve age 18 and up in the Northern Indiana area to provide that Core 40 diploma opportunity. When I took this job, I was surprised to learn that there's like 23 states that do not offer this across the nation. Fortunately, Indiana is not one of them. So they have another opportunity other than a GED. We are proud of our affiliation with GEI. We have now grown in Indiana. We have 4 schools in our network. There's 18 in GEI, and this year we added Evansville and Terre Haute as standalone. So we have 24 schools of our 47 Excel Centers nationally. Like anything with COVID, we got hit a little bit with numbers, but in the last 3 years, we've grown from 382 to our fall count in 22, we hit 609. In our 23 count, we hit 721. And this year in our count for October, we hit 870. So we are growing. And obviously, the more we grow, we can be more standalone financially. We're excited about that opportunity. South Bend is a big part of that growth. And I'm excited to have Melissa share our story. In 2015, Debbie Coble brought this idea of the Excel Center to the board, the Greater Goodwill of Michiana board. And she likes to tell the story that it took them all about 5 minutes to agree that this is a direction we want to go in for mission-based services. I'm excited at this time to introduce our director, Melissa LaPlace, to share the positive work we provide in the South Bend community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Albert. Thank you for having me here this morning as I represent for the charter for South Bend Excel Center. I'd like to go over some of the key talking points of who we are and what we do. So the vision that we have is empowering adults to become self-advocates using education and career to get them out of generational poverty in our area, which currently is at 13.2% of our population in St. Joe County. Some of the key parts of our vision is that we have a yearly goal of encouraging our enrollment to grow by 15%. And so far, South Bend has been able to meet that goal. We're growing. We're introducing a new ML multi-language learner program into our school. It's in its infancy stages, but we see a positive growth in that area as well. We continue to advocate for local pathways that are relevant to the industry that's in the area of St. Joe County, and that is also going well with the support of the Academy through Goodwill Leads. As well, we're looking to offer some new opportunities, not only through Ivy Tech Community College for dual credits, but we now have on staff a PhD instructor that will be offering dual credit opportunities within our building. We've seen a lot of successes through South Bend. A few examples are a young man named Justin. Justin found himself as a high school student in trouble with the law. He continued to make some poor choices in his youth and dropped out of school. At the time, school wasn't really a priority. After graduating from the Excel Center South Bend 2 years ago, Justin is now a junior at Indiana University, earning his mathematics degree and his social workers degree. Another example is Ashton. Ashton's a female student that graduated last year. She not only went through a welding certification, which she excelled at, but she also took the opportunity of a Goodwill program that is offered in automotive, graduated at the top of her class, and was picked up by the instructors of that program to work full-time in their company. We talk about the childcare that's offered through the Excel Centers, and one of the things that I've seen while I've been at Excel Center is students who are encouraged to be in early childhood education. They come back and they are employed in childcare at the Kids Excel program with us as they move up in that career opportunity. So that has been something to see with some of our students. Currently, we've strengthened our relationship with local entities like the YWCA, Catholic Charities, and even the military, as we now have 2 local recruiters that come to us regularly from the Army and the Marine Corps. We have a female student who will be leaving for the Marine boot camp in January. To date, he said we have 297 graduates, which is about 30 graduates a year, which is a great number. And we're watching that number increase. The goal for our community is that we're giving people the opportunity to either choose higher education or employment. And so we are filling the gaps in the unemployment rates in our area. And by doing so, we're also giving them an opportunity to not just go back into the workforce, but to get above a level 1 position. We're moving people out of retail and hospitality and moving them into the opportunity for careers. Every student will graduate with the Indiana 440 as well as a certification and dual credit if that's what they've chosen to do. Some of the certifications that we're seeing that are most popular currently in our area is community health worker, automotive, CompTIA, which is technically a coding program. We're also seeing pharmacy tech as a very valuable certification that our students are taking. The state provides us a list of acceptable certifications each year, and what we do is we sit down with our life coaches and we say, okay, what's trending in our industry? What are our students asking for, and what's on the list that we can provide? Since 21-22, there pretty much has been a complete turnover of staff at the South Bend facility. And that includes a new superintendent as well. With that, you might say, well, why have you lost so many? We lost 5 teachers and 3 coaches. Some of them were voluntary, some of them were not. When I stepped into the position, I actually stepped into some really big shoes to fill. And what I did was I had to make the building my own. And so there's been a lot of transition at South Bend. But with that, I've been able to work with my people to create a team that is cohesive, that believes in the mission. They support each other, they know each other. We've done that through a lot of team building and a lot of food, actually. But we have a competent team that knows that they are all out there for the same reason, and we're able to remove barriers together as well as support our students on their journeys. The average years of experience in my building is 25 years. We have multiple teachers with master's degrees. We have one with a PhD and others with bachelor degrees. And so we do have a highly qualified staff. And not only with the years of experience, but with that cohesive team that we've built, we are making a difference. Financially, our financial stability, I know that he touched on that. Of our 4 schools, South Bend is in the best financial position currently. The student count is 290. That's where we were in the summer. South Bend's expected to generate almost 500,000 in net income this school year. And for the leads, that's expected to generate over 275,000. And so there is growth in the enrollment. We have also just recently been awarded a Quality 2 grant for almost $850,000 over 2 years. And that will help us to build our ML programming and reach more of our multi-language learners so that we can help them be in a better position to get the core 40 so that they can graduate and go out to the community. Current sustainability through in-kind donations. Goodwill Industries of Michiana actively supports the Excel Center with their in-kind donations. And there's so many, I couldn't list them all possibly today. But Excel does not pay for the services that Goodwill provides for us. This includes the childcare, which is something that no other school in South Bend or St. Joe County offers as a free childcare for students to attend. So that is a service that is utilized. And I can tell you, we have about 20 kids every day because I can hear them in my office. Goodwill of Michiana has agreed to leverage all balances sheets and cash positions to ensure that Excel has everything that it needs to succeed. So we do have the backing and the support of Goodwill Leads. The Goodwill Industries in Michiana has over 20 million in cash and investments at their disposal. And so again, we know that we are supported and the needs going to be covered. The commitment from Goodwill Industries, we are part of the Goodwill family. I feel like we are supported by Goodwill. We are within a mile of where our home quarters are, and we're able to offer services with their support. We also have support from a local food bank called Cultivate Foods, which feeds our student breakfast and lunch every day. And that has helped to increase our enrollment because we're feeding them. We have resources in the community, including WIC, Cultivate Foods, charities. We have multiple resources that come in, but in addition to Goodwill's mission, we have NFP, Second Chance, and Ability First programming for some of our students that come in that may need more assistance than what we can provide. And so we use those other services. Enrollment has been growing consistently, and this is not just post-COVID. I've worked very hard to build relationships with the South Bend Community School Corporation, which is a very large corporation in our area. I have multiple high schools that are now meet with me monthly, and I go and I present at their schools, and they send us students, and we have a very collaborative relationship now. That also includes Purdue Polytechnic and Career Academy, one of which is here. And so in addition to the relationship that we have with those schools, we've also been in the St. Joe County Police Department. We're doing classes in the jail, and this is our second year of that. So that is going very well. So for closing emphasis, the renewal of this charter is not just an investment in education, but it's in the future of South Bend. When we graduate adults into the community, they can either choose to go to higher education or into the workforce. And it's not uncommon that probably 70% of our population does choose to go back into the workforce, but we've prepared them for a career outside of a level 1 position. Most importantly, as someone who is a GED graduate, this opportunity was not there for me when I was a young mother. We're offering people hope, and a lot of them come in and they don't have that. So when we can give them hope, we build their confidence, and with their confidence comes positive growth. With their growth comes community growth. So I ask you to approve our renewal.
Thank you very much. If you would both stay just right there, we're going to go ahead and jump into question and answer with the board. I will start with the members of the board who are in the room with me. Questions from either of you?
Doc Melissa, I do have one. First of all, thank you. The question is this: you had mentioned some powerful stories of graduates of your program. And I'm intrigued often by what happens the next day after graduation or completion. It's like they get the milestone and then what? And so after that next day, you know about their lives. Do you know that because of intentional programming that you do to follow through? Do you know that because the relationships were strong and they talk to you? Where's the relative weight of those two things? If you could share a little bit of that, because that's some pretty important stuff.
Absolutely. So first, for some of them, we just got to get them over that threshold. A lot of students will get really close and then they kind of backpedal because what do? You've been working up to this for so long, and it's a little scary to know that it's not going to be there anymore. So once we get them over that threshold and we get them to graduate, it is an option of tracking them, phone calls, staying in contact with them. But I would say 90% of what we do is relationship building and getting to know them. We talk to them on social media. They reach out to us. because of the relationship that we've built, they are excited to tell us where they're going and what they've done. And so if it's not the student, it's the student family reaching out to tell us this is what they're doing. Tracking students post-graduate is an area that we need to continue to work on, but I would say that 90% of what we do is about relationship.
Thank you.
Okay. Hannah, any questions? Okay, let me turn to the members of the board who are online. Any questions for Goodwill South Bend? I'm sorry, the Excel Center South Bend. Yes.
Do you do work and learn as part of your curriculum? And forgive me if you said this, I didn't hear it.
Can you ask that
Like
question?
hands-on learning, internships, ghosting, this things.
So yes, we do a lot of hands-on learning. A lot of our instruction has to be highly engaging for the adult population. That's another reason why we have students coming back and why our enrollment is increasing. We work very hard as a team to create lessons that are engaging and relevant to what our students need in their lives.
So do you have relationships with external employers so that the students get a chance to experience that in some way?
So currently, we don't have any internships available. We do have a relationship with a large corporation called Steel Warehouse, which is one of our certifications, a CNC fabricating operator. And so that's our current link.
What are the demographics of your population?
I would say that we have an interesting demographic. We have Swahili, French, Hispanic, Black, white. Actual numbers I don't have in front of me, but I would say that our demographic is changing every day. We have seen an increase in our students that are 18 to 21 years old due to the pandemic. And so that seemed to be where we were headed. But then miraculously, our 35 and older has also increased. And so there's kind of a balance between 18 and 21 and 35 and older.
The jail classes, how do you do that? You just take people who are going to be there long enough to finish a course, or?
So the collaboration that we have with the St. Joe County Jail is that we are there's a list of 75 that are waiting to take our course. We do a night course twice a week. They have to be nonviolent offenders, and typically we want them to be there at least a year. But we do have students that start and then they get shipped somewhere else, or maybe they are released. So it's not really a drop-in, but if one leaves, we can always add a new one to it.
Okay, and the last question I had was, if you had to say what the key features were that make you so successful, and I congratulate you on all that work that you're doing, that's great. What would you say the key features are that you couldn't be successful without?
I couldn't be successful without the support of my staff. We are a family. We wouldn't be successful if we weren't able to reach our students on a personal level and accept their vulnerabilities without judgment. They come there, they trust us, and so they keep coming back.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, I have a question. Your staff underwent a change. How diverse is your staff now?
My staff is very diverse, Hispanic, Black, white, German, male to female. We have a pretty good ratio there as well. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for your time. We will shift over. The staff have recommended a full 15-year charter renewal for the Excel Center South Bend. So, James, unless there is anything else from you,
I'm good.
right into voting. Do I have a motion to accept the recommendation of staff and renew the charter for a full 15 years for Excel Center South Bend?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we will take Dr. Donlin as the motion and Ms. Hawkins as the second, and I will do a roll call individually. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I too am a yes. So with that, congratulations to the Excel Center South Bend. Thank you very much for all the work you put into the proposals. We appreciate your time. Take a very brief 5-minute transition as we shift to the next item on the agenda, which will be the Purdue Polytechnic High School, also in South Bend. See the, hey, James. We have the public comments. I'm not seeing the public comments. Somebody. Yeah, okay. I see the ones from years past, but I'm not, okay,
Yeah, it was my. I didn't. mark
Okay,
it.
that's fine.
I'll double check. with you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, great. So as we are transitioning, if the folks from Purdue Polytechnic want to come up to the front row, that would be great. We're going to move into staff presentation in just about 60 seconds. Thanks. Okay, great. I am going to turn it over to James Bentley and we will get started. Thank you very much.
Hello, welcome to the third school on the list. This is Purdue Polytechnic High School South Bend. This is their first renewal request. They were approved by the board in 2019 and opened in 2020, 2021. This is kind of an unusual school in that it is the only, to my knowledge, innovation network charter school that is not located in Marion County. We're familiar with them in IPS. There are lots of them in IPS, but this is 2024. Was that when the agreement was entered into? Yep. So they entered an agreement with South Bend Community School Corporation to be that corporation's first innovation network charter school. So I just want to throw that out there, sort of makes them unique among all of the schools that aren't located in Marion County. So as you can see from the recommendation, it was a slow start for the school. They originally started with, I believe, was it 33 students, I think?
Yeah, 33.
33, sorry, my pages are all flipped over. 33 students in South Bend. They have a relatively, to the school district, high percentage of students with IEPs and English language learners. And which is sort of, again, and I think I've said this in the recommendations at one point, when it's not uncommon for a school to get an increase in a particular population once they start serving that population, and everyone determines that this is a great place for my kid because they're serving this population already, and then it just kind of feeds into itself. You see this with some of the IPS Haitian population increases. Word of mouth is a very powerful enrollment tool. If you look at the statistics, their chronic absenteeism declined slightly. It's still rather high, but again, this is something that everyone is dealing with these days. Their chronic absenteeism rose from 54 to 69, which is high for the district. But you know, this is something the state is increasingly focusing on, and I think the state is now requiring certain things that they weren't requiring before. And in addition, the school itself has implemented measures to sort of address this. This is one of the chronic problems that many schools, but South Bend acknowledges is one of the problems that they're facing, to try to make sure that students attend and that they aren't gone for more than 10% of the school year. Not all this notwithstanding, they've graduated a total of 36 students. Their 3-year graduation percentage is 72%. And while graduation rates have not been released officially for this year, the preliminary data shows that the graduation will have increased by around 10 percentage points. So that's great, an increase in their graduation percentage. Where the school is shining is their SAT scores. Their English, their EBRW, a portion of the SAT, it dropped slightly. It's still the second highest proficiency for all comparable high schools in both years for which they have data, and higher than the school district. Similarly with the math, while that dropped slightly, they were the second highest in 2023 and the third highest in 2024 of comparable schools, which was also higher than the school district. So their students on the SAT are performing better than the district and in the top of all the comparable schools in the area. So again, high school, that's our academic data. This is part of the issue with a school in 5 years. We have 4 years of data, only 2 years of SAT data, only 3 years of graduate data. And honestly, that's with a school that started at 33 students, that's not a lot of data. 100% graduation rate in year one student, perfect. If I left out the one student part, you guys would have been really impressed. So moving on to financial health, obviously starting out with few students makes it difficult to start. They've increased every year. And as of the first count date of 24-25, I'm sure they can tell you how many they have now. It was around 138, 140. But all that notwithstanding, the financial position is fine. You can see the actual numbers in the recommendation. Let's see, their positive net asset position, positive change in net assets, I believe. Yes, it actually went from negative to positive, which is good. They met standard on 6 out of 9 of our financial metrics. They're part of the Purdue network. They're Purdue, I don't actually know what your official name of the network is. We're just going to call it the Purdue network, if that's okay. Which, provides leadership, talent, HR, financial services, all these other things, and financial support if necessary. So we have no concerns about the financial health. Obviously, enrollment is a thing. I'd like to see that increase, I think up to 300 if they can. One of the advantages, a couple of the advantages they have, one is the Purdue name, and now they're established. It's been there a couple of years, starting to get their name recognition out. The innovation agreement is also a positive. The district's not going to just send them students as part of this agreement. However, it does make them a bit more attractive, depending on how the kinds of services and things that they're providing, gives them access to classes that they don't have, for example. So it just makes Purdue a more attractive school for students to attend. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is the lease, the facility. They currently have a 10-year lease in their facility. And I think we've had some conversations about whether they want to spend the rest of their, the 10 years in the facility, find somewhere else. I understand there may be some size constraints if they start to actually hit 300 students. I don't know. I'll let them discuss that. But we have every confidence in the network and their staff being able to figure that out. So again, no concerns on the financial side, no concerns on the compliance side. I mean, they run a bunch of schools. They've got it down to science. We have no issues with working with them from a compliance standpoint. So with that, I will let them come up and answer your questions.
James, one moment.
Sure.
Sorry, just give us a moment. Sorry.
So 10-year renewal. Sorry, meant to say that in the beginning. 10-year renewal, as this is their second renewal.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you.
Can you clarify for us the 3 of the 9 financial metrics that they have not hit? It looks like that is year 2 of that. So I'm curious to know, are we perpetuating those same 3 metrics going forward?
That's pretty, 6 out of 9 is pretty good. They're a network. And as I said sometimes a network skews the metrics. So and this is something actually, apropos of nothing, I was on a meeting with the NACSA, which is the National Charter Alliance financial work group yesterday, which I've been a part of since the beginning. And we were actually spending a great deal of time talking about how you factor in network, particularly networks that upstream or that move money around, how you factor that into our financial metrics, which are as I said in my memo, really based on individual school
Mhm.
performance.
Mhm.
I can pull up the dashboard when they're talking and tell you what metrics they missed on. I don't actually know what they,
I think at the core of my question is, so yes, that would be helpful, but really, are we perpetuating those same three metrics that were struggles one year and pushing those forward? Like, have we addressed those, or are there three new ones that are popping
I
up?
will look them up and let you know, because it may be that those are metrics that are skewed by the
Yes,
network participation.
correct.
And honestly, looking at the financial metrics like that, there are some, I hate to say it, some are more important than others.
Right.
And yeah, I'll let you know if
That
it's the
gets to
same
what I'm
three
thinking.
and what
Okay,
our thoughts
great.
around this. I'll look them
Thank
up
you.
while they're talking.
Thank you, thank you.
Great, thank you. So we'll invite the representatives from Purdue Polytechnic High School South Bend to come up. If you would just introduce yourself and share your role in the school. We would ask you to limit your comments to 10 minutes. I'll give you kind of a signal if we hit the 9-minute mark, just so you are prepared. Go ahead, thank you.
Perfect. Well, hello. It's such an honor to be here today with such a distinguished board. I'd like to introduce my colleagues here with me, who are some of the best leaders in the country and state. We have William Durham, Chief of Staff, and he's also on the State Board of Education and serves as the secretary. We have Laura Cope, who is our Chief of Exceptional Learners. Dr. Krista Primrose, Chief Academic Officer, and Justin Zubrowski, Principal of PPHS South Bend. And then we have a Director of Marketing and Communication, Ariel Anderson, and joining us later will be Shatoya Ward, who is the Chief of Schools. So I want to share a little bit about our school, and then I will allow Justin to come up and give the really good information. And so our network of schools are STEM focused, but student centered. And our mission is to empower students to create the world that they imagine for themselves. We really focus on making sure students are the center of all the decisions that we do, and that they're finding their voice and choice and agency so they can succeed. Our metric of success is not merely graduation, but making sure they have a solid post-secondary plan so they can live out their freedom dreams that they have for themselves. We know the future of work is changing, and so we have the values of communication, collaboration, and innovation. And we know if students master those, they will do well in whatever career they choose for themselves. And the primary objective of our mission is to prepare more students, specifically those from underserved environments, for success at Purdue University and any path they choose. We believe deeply in the fact that education has long disserved certain student populations, and so we're here to disrupt that. And one of our deeply held beliefs is that students, we believe in nurturing the student genius, so really going from an asset mindset. We believe in diversity, equity, and belonging. We believe that our staff should represent the student demographics. We believe in conceptualized learning, real world problem solving that we know leads to higher ordered thinking and better mastery of course content. Again, we believe in mastery learning. So we want to make sure students are mastering core content so they're prepared for post-secondary. So we're not just giving credit for students being really nice or bringing a pencil to class, but really mastering the academic subjects. And then lastly, and really importantly, we teach students how to think, not what to think. So it is our job to create critical thinkers and the leaders of the future. And that none of this would be possible without our beautiful partnership with Purdue University, which gives our students access to higher education from the moment they step foot in our building, from college courses that they get to take to staying on campus over the summer. There's just so many numerous opportunities where our students get connected to higher education. And I'll never forget the first year our students spent 4 weeks on campus over the summer for free, living in the dorms, taking classes with other college students. And one student said to me, "I never knew that Purdue was a place for someone like me until I had this experience." Then I think about our other student who's one of our first graduates from Purdue University, as well as our first student to PPHS, who when she went on college campus during her junior year of high school, she was tutoring the college students in the Tech 120 class because she was so prepared from PPHS. So with that said, it's my distinct honor to introduce Justin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. It's funny because 5 years ago, I was here as the school director for the Excel Center South Bend. I learned a lot in that time there. And one of the biggest things I learned from their leadership was it's important to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. So the reason I say that is because that very same meeting was also the charter approval for Purdue Polytechnic South Bend. So although I was not the founding principal, I've had my ear to the ground, not only to PPHS South Bend, but the South Bend community in general, from start to finish. And so I think it's important to note how this school came to fruition. In 2019, the charter was approved. In January or February of 2020, a community meeting was held to discuss the idea of co-locating PPHS South Bend with Washington High School inside of a South Bend Community School Corporation. Now, if you're not from South Bend, you may not know that if you say the word charter, you're cussing in some rooms, right? And so I'm a product of South Bend schools, K to 12, born and raised, 4th generation South Bend resident. What I have seen is a divide in the educational landscape, and it is my personal mission to bridge that divide to bring everybody together. Not everybody feels the same way, but if I can be stubborn and naive enough, I might be able to convince everybody that. So there was a lot of pushback to that co-location. I give a lot of credit as an outside observer at the time for our PPHS leadership taking that community feedback and saying, you know what? We have a mission, but the community is telling us this is not what they want. So we found our own facility, and then the pandemic hits, and it's full speed ahead. I have never had the pleasure of opening a school during a pandemic, but I have had the pleasure of taking over about 1.5 years after it started. I lead with my heart, much more than my brain. And when I arrived, there was a lot of healing that needed to happen. So 33 students, expected to have 100. Pandemic hits. What are you going to do? Well, you take a look at the numbers and you realize that you have to adjust your staffing model to match the resources that you have. We have done that and we'll continue to do that no matter where we are. The biggest thing I think a school needs to be able to thrive is a positive culture. I consider that a launch pad to academic success. So fast forward to 2024, South Bend Community Schools has entered in an innovation agreement with Purdue Polytechnic South Bend. We are the only charter school working collaboratively with the local school corporation. We have 100% staff retention from last year to this year. 97% of our students who have started this year are still with us. 46% of our population are exceptional learners. 27% of our students have an IEP. 19 of our students are in our multilingual learner program. We are 54% free and reduced lunch. And the thing of which I am most proud of about our school related to culture, in school year 21-22, we had 7 physical altercations. And that was the year where we had about 90 students and we were maybe 60% in school, the other e-learning due to COVID. 2022-23, we had 12 physical altercations in the school. 23-24, we had 5. Currently, as I stand here this year, we've had 0 physical altercations in our school. And so I believe that if you can create an environment where teachers feel supported, you can build and attract the best teachers in the area. If you take care of your teachers, they will take care of your students, and then your students will take care of the community. So all that to say, it's been a heck of a ride, been a long story. I know where we've been, I know where we're going, and I know how we're going to get there. So I thank you all for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. We will shift over to the question and answer portion. And so let me start first with the board members who are in the room. Questions?
Can I really quick answer your question?
Yes, please.
So I went back and looked, and as it turns out, what was missed in 2024 was primary reserve ratio. They missed it by 0.01.
Yeah.
So 0.25 is meeting standard. They had 0.24. So the second was you have a change in net assets and aggregated change in net assets margin. Those two are interrelated once you get into multiple years. So in other words, they count as 2 in the beginning and then 1 when you have enough data to actually calculate them both. Their change in net assets is positive, but their aggregated change in net assets margin was negative by 0.05. So if they had 0.1 better
Mhm.
PRR, 0.05 better, they would have met all 9.
Thank
So
you.
it was very close,
Mhm.
not a concern.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great. So let me shift over to questions for Purdue Polytechnic High School South Bend. Questions from either of the members of the board here in the room?
I do. I just have a quick one for anybody. You are all awesome representatives of your mission in the field, so thank you for your time for sure. It notes in our packet that the details and the nuances of your partnership with the district are still in the works. Can you tell me what is ideal? Like, what do you want it to be? What do you want that to look like? What would be successful?
I love that question. What's really important to us is whatever community we're in, we want to make sure that we're collaborating with the community. And we believe deeply, like Justin alluded to, is making sure we're listening to the community and hearing what they are looking for. And so we see all students as our mission is to support all students. So we want to make sure we're working collaboratively with the district. And some of the things long-term, well, this year we've been able to share their food services, which has upped the food offerings for our students, which has been great. So again, something that's very student-centered. When students have the food they need, they're able to academically achieve. We're looking towards being able to share athletics. We know that's a really great opportunity for students. Our data across our network shows that students who participate in athletics have higher GPAs, have higher SAT scores, have higher attendance rates, all things that are not predictors, but things that support their post-secondary goals. And so ultimately, we want to be able to share resources, share students, share ideas, and just make the community better through partnership.
Awesome. Thanks.
Questions?
Yes, please. Dr. Warren and Justin, I have a question that will hopefully put me into the experience of a student in your building. So you mentioned chronic absenteeism, or it has been mentioned. And with chronic absenteeism comes opportunities and challenge. What we know about chronic absenteeism is that more days for some feel like Mondays, because students have had a couple days off, then they're coming back, and they're coming back all sorts of times during the week. The Tuesday feels like a Monday, the Thursday feels like a Monday for some students. And Mondays, while they get a bad rap, they're still real. So how do your teachers celebrate and leverage more Mondays towards student success?
It's a really interesting way to put a question. I like that. Appreciate it. So our culture starts with our teachers. We have a morning meeting every single day. Starts at 8:05 before students enter the doors at 8:30. And sometimes we have an objective that we need to get information out. A lot of the times it's really discussing students and what we know about them and what we know they might be bringing into the building that day. So we're intentionally thinking about creating a positive experience for students right when they enter the door. The interesting thing with the cell phone ban this year was I've been reading a lot of Jonathan Haidt, Anxious Generation, all of that stuff. And I'm like, I think there's something to this. And so luckily we have a small population. So I was able to go on Amazon and buy some cell phone lock boxes. Bought 3 of them, one for each stairwell before each student goes up to class. And so administrators are standing at each stairwell collecting cell phones, but we're not just collecting cell phones. The purpose we are there is so that we can be there and greet them with a smile so that they see a positive experience with a positive adult the moment they enter the door. Now, I will tell you, it's interesting. The cell phones, not as many kids are turning them in, but our rule is if we don't see it, it's not a problem. And so the beginning of the year was a lot of personal conversations, me one-on-one explaining, I did a little decision tree, what happens if this, what happens if that, because they always ask really good questions. So I made sure to lay it out. But we're not seeing cell phones. Kids are talking to each other at lunch. Like before this year, there was a lot of just buried heads at lunch, and we're social. They're learning so much more than just academics because of it. And so in order to make that experience real for each student, you have to get to know them individually. I will never forget the second month I was in this role, February of 2022, we had parent-teacher conferences, and I was sitting there with a sophomore who really poor attendance, really low motivation. Every day was a Monday. And I just asked myself, where do you see yourself at 22 years old? And his response was either in the music industry or dead. And I almost cried. And I didn't, but I thought about that night, and I just so happened to have a friend in the music industry in LA. And so the next day I brought him into my office and I texted my friend to make sure he was going to be available. We FaceTimed and we talked about what it takes, what you got to do to get there, how you got to operate, what information you need to seek, what people expect from you. And this was a kid who didn't care about high school. Fast forward 2 years, last year, he was a senior and he was walking with his girlfriend in the hallway. He had no idea he was listening to me. And I heard him say, man, forget college, but high school is really important. That kid is taking classes at Ivy Tech right now. And so in a small school, you get a lot of kids from other schools whose counselors, teachers, principals, or maybe even parents might say, maybe you need a small school environment. But those kids bring with them a heck of a story. And if you don't figure out that story, you're never going to get to them. So that's how we address the Monday issue.
Thank you.
Great. Questions from members of the board online?
You might have said this already, but how do you address, what's your strategy around absenteeism? Because we know the research shows that interferes with success.
Yeah, it's tough to learn stuff if you're not in school. And so our strategy is a multi-pronged approach. Quite honestly, one of the biggest supports we have is in August, the local St. Joe County prosecutor called all of the school districts in for a meeting and said that every time a kid reaches 10 unexcused absences and it becomes truant, I want you to send us a letter. We're then going to send a letter home with our letterhead on it stating that it's very important for you to be in school. Here are some resources, talk to your school. And so those letters for parents that were having a hard time getting a hold of, we're getting a hold of them now. So that is super helpful. Conversations are happening. And so right now we're in the stage of building relationships with not just the students, but also their parents, because I can't wake them up and pull them out of bed in the morning. Like just my kids, I might dump a bucket of cold water on and say, school's important, you got to go, don't matter. But I'm not their parent. So how do we build those relationships with those parents to where they see, they may have had a negative school experience themselves. And so oftentimes parents come to us with a little bit of a guard or a wall built up, and it's important for us to break that down. We're also offering a lot of incentives to get to school. On November 22nd, we took 40 kids for a bowling field trip, everyone that had 94% attendance and above. Right now, we've got a winter attendance push going. Between the 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and winter break, if you have 94% attendance or above during that time frame, I'm going to buy everybody donuts. You're going to get a skip the lunch line pass for free, and in our little advisories or homerooms, if you will. The advisory and homeroom with the highest percentage is going to get lunch on me. And so trying to make it fun, but also trying to elevate the gravity of the situation to create that sense of urgency as well.
Mm-hmm. Any further questions? I have two. Sorry, James. One, so first, yesterday, the State Board of Education passed formal changes to the diplomas that will look significantly different. And so I am personally concerned how those changes will look in charter schools and how charter schools are preparing for them. So there are expectations that every student in your building will be prepared for college and career. And so can you talk through how you are actively preparing to change your model or prepare students differently given the new diploma requirements and course sequencing requirements that'll go into place for next year's freshmen?
So one of the benefits that we have that we're really excited about in preparing students for college and career, our academic committee is actually chaired by Dr. Jenna Rickus, who is I want to get the higher ed terms correctly, the senior Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning. So that's a really great opportunity to make sure we're partnering with higher education. We also work very closely with the Modern Youth Apprenticeship programs. We've always done really great things with internships, externships. So a lot of those things that go into the new seals of employment, enlistment, enrollment. I will say we've had the benefit of having a state board member on our team. So it has really helped us to make sure we're aligned. And Dr. Jenner has been a great partner in that process and has continuously communicated with us. And I think one of the things that are really important that, and another thing that's really great about our network that I know most charters are not lucky enough to have is we have an amazing chief academic officer who is dedicated to this and has been working on this for years and has since joining the team 5 years ago has elevated our academic offerings. And we've seen the academic gains because of that. And so I think a big piece that we have to focus on because we serve the majority of our students are first generation first generation will be, they're not yet, but will be first generation college students. And so one of the things that's really important is we're setting the standard high. So our expectation is that our students get the seals and we're setting them up for success. And then one of the things we're working on this year is really honing in on our academic offerings, our academic advising, making sure those things are really, really tight and really well done. We've actually recently upped our staffing there so that we can get that continued support, but it really is the thing that we did well that will set us apart is we started planning for this before. We've been planning the whole time and we'll continue to plan and we'll really hit the ground running in January. But again, have to thank Dr. Primrose for her leadership here.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much. You may be seated. We appreciate your time. We will go into vote. James, unless there's anything else
Nope.
you want to share with us? Okay. So the staff have recommended a 10-year charter renewal for Purdue Polytechnic High School South Bend. Do I have a motion to accept the staff's recommendations of a 10-year renewal?
So moved.
Okay, we have a movement, and do I have a second?
Support?
Okay, thank you very much. We will do an individual roll call. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I too am a yes. So congratulations to Purdue Polytechnic High School South Bend. Okay, we're going to do a transition. I would recommend at this time we take a short 10-minute break
Okay.
to allow everyone a short bio break, and we will resume at exactly 11:10. Thank you very much.
So. But if you guys are hungry or
Keep pushing and see how we do.
Because we want to job. I would say that. We don't go out. So let me ask you, has a lot of the financial discussion been saying,
Yeah.
like, and now this
Say that.
primary thing, to talk about the network, because they're actually there. And you're not talking about the far end, we don't sort of like you're kind of meeting discussions about the best way to start. So, the bottom line, the schools we have are good.
I think we can talk about the nuances of each individual action.
Yeah. Okay, and then I'll do the network, yeah, we'll do it.
But what about the school representative? This still has individual.
Yeah, I know, I've asked you, she's the regional director and some of the.
Okay, because it's just for reviewing all, right? Like what?
It might be. No, so. The improvement that was in place, so I get really in this interest.
Is that a brand new charter? I thought
So
it was an extension of
the way that we told it to them is we said it's just an extension of the existing charter, so you have to come back.
Got it. So they have 1 year on that.
On that council charter, yeah,
So
so.
now we're
And
considering.
now we're considering that's primarily in the high school, they only have 1 year. With each teachers, like that's the only data we have for 2024, and those kids were all transferred.
Should we consider like a new?
You know what, that's up to you guys, maybe, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think that's totally fine, because it is kind of, like the high school's been around for 4 years. So yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Not even
Yeah.
4 months.
Well,
It feels aggressive.
yeah, that's fine. We can bring this up. I'm totally fine.
That was just something.
Yeah, and if you want them to modify. You see.
Oh, I
So, no.
Yeah. That's fine.
That
would be great. That would be easiest. Yeah.
Like I totally get that. Yes, it is a weird situation.
I agree, they're fine, it's short, it's long, I don't need it 4 years from now. But, and feels a lot.
And we.
Especially given.
Totally, and I mean, I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Ditto. I saw it.
and I know that, you know,
This, one of the parking garages.
we've had our battles.
Mhm.
Okay, I love it. It's
One
big
thing
block.
is really really fun. They are absolutely one of the most very thoughtful, very exceptional. And the vision.
It's very.
They're not like they don't have a- So I feel very happy. I don't know how it reached somebody else, but I mean, it's-
Oh, it's terrible.
They don't get here for like. off.
I'm
good.
I got a question, I mean, these are the, we did this sort of easy ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell them. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. They were. But I'll. Yeah, they didn't even get a temperature. No, I told them.
So we ended up voting for like a trainer staff.
Oh.
or something.
Yes, yes.
But it was, as he said, really awkward because. We ended up going, and it was a lot of people talking, but I was walking, staying there for time. If you could just hurts today. Oh, no. I am the pleasant new chair for HOA board too. And I was like, all right, let's get on this. We're not dilly dallying here. So wonderful soul and sight. Absolutely.
Well, we park on the east side and the west side.
Yeah.
I like your shoes.
Cozy.
It's much larger usually, double the size of this. Yeah. But they're. Conference rooms, I think, are big news too. Normally they're much larger.
You could wear those all the way up to probably anywhere.
Superintendent.
No, man.
Something.
Yeah. we're talking.
Oh, I don't have.
Be-
I have to keep it up.
Because
Well,
this goes all the way up to finally. Yeah, in March, yeah. So. And always, never fails.
yeah, maybe I can do it. I'll do my hotspot here if we've got 2 minutes.
Folks, we're going to reconvene in just 5 minutes. So if everyone would get settled here in just a moment, that'd be great. Geo, that's the one that's out of order in here. Here we go. That's funny. Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, they really do look like same haircut and everything.
I know.
Wow.
She's great.
Just real quick before we start.
Yeah,
sure. With the PLA, you want me to do unions? Then go to the academic medical schools, and she has all the way here for each school. That, you can do that. Okay, so do the organization first, and then have do the academic separately. That's each person goes, so I'll do like 48, and then 48. And 48.
sure. That sounds fine. Defer to you. Hold on. Okay. Are we set?
Yep.
We have everyone online? Oh. let's
Everyone-
skip. I did say 10:10 or 11:10, so let's just get
Oh, got a minute.
Michael just a moment.
Okay. All good.
Hmm.
Don't have to be that way, yeah. Okay, remember. I've not had time to look at the state board's final recommendation. It would be interesting to unpack that.
I don't think there were any changes from what they
From the
proposed a
last
month
one?
ago. Yeah. It was just a.
But that's
final
good at
formal.
least, and not a wholesale. That's the problem, right? They just keep flipping. It'll be interesting, but at least. However you feel about Katie, consistency, like she's gonna be there, and he's the one who went through this whole thing, so I'm hopeful that things will kind of settle down a little. As
Yeah.
opposed to going through completely new,
It will be interesting to see how it impacts the adult
yeah.
accountability. That's the next. sort of
We've been
good
having
question.
lots of conversations. We found Katie necessarily, like David Buzzy,
Yeah.
the folks on staff who know stuff
Okay.
about that, because, for example, one of the big issues that the is the cohort graduate is the one that's close to everywhere.
Yeah.
And with the cohort graduate, well, it's over.
Yeah. Hard to-
Well, cohort by definition, there's two guys. So. The feds require you for the cohort graduate. That's something you can't do anything about, but there's nothing that says that the state can't, on the website, for example, use the graduation enrollment percentage, it's in the adult account system, as opposed to the cohort. It matters to them because people go on with GPS of look, and schools are terrible.
Mhm.
So it's little things like that we're talking about, in addition to trying to figure out if you need to make adjustments. To all that kind of things.
Yep, exactly.
Because part of the whole reason for graduating is different in cohort graduating and from the graduation percentage of the general adult kids.
Yeah.
You know, they just, the one in the rule right now is just kind of a weird. Take your basically ME divided by the graduates and multiply it by 4, and I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. Most of you ours is declared grade 12 students who graduate. But some schools
Right.
declare more grade 12 students, the worst now it's on that declaring grade 13. So like those aren't even, ours, they don't even fall into that, so we still gotta work.
Yeah.
Because we can't. As an officer, basically demand that they slot.
Yeah.
So it's been, we have a lot to work on.
Okay.
It's really hard to. Hold on.
We've got some
It's really
time.
hard to be like, okay, 5 minutes. Because
Should we want to get started? Well, let's go ahead and jump on. Maybe they're waiting for us. Okay, so we are going to reconvene. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Wanted to give everyone a break. We are going to transition and discuss Geo Next Generation Academy. I'm going to turn it over to James. And James, for everyone's benefit online, would you just refresh us as a board as to what we did in May and the sort of legal status of this charter agreement? Just help refresh everyone's memory.
okay,
please.
the first thing I want to do is there's a change in our recommendation. I just want to make that out front. After some discussion, I think what we're going to do is change our recommendation from a 10-year renewal to a 7-year renewal. And I'll tell you why. The reason why is related to the second question, which is the history. This school was originally approved as a high school in 2019. It opened in 2021, so in the pandemic. They were approved to add grades. So when they first came to us, there was always this idea that eventually they would be a K-12. Eventually, certainly not in 5 years, but eventually. The Geo Foundation, the sort of operator for this school, runs a K-12 in Gary, so they're familiar with that model. And their belief, which I tend to share, is that the earlier you get a kid, the longer you keep a kid, the more likely you are to be able to educate that kid within your model. At any rate, so they were approved to serve grades 7 and 8 in 2023, sort of as a natural part of that extent of that growth. They wanted to grow down. So instead of going K6 to 9-12, they went 9-12, 7-8. And then in 2024, we had a bit of an issue with the school, Indy STEAM, that was actually located on the property owned by the foundation. So the Geo Foundation owned a property, the old Tinley schools. There were 2 buildings on that property. They occupied one building. Indy STEAM occupied the other building, but both were owned by Geo. When it became clear that Indy STEAM needed to close, because Indy STEAM, was a K8, I think, K6 maybe. One of the things that became an option very clearly was for Geo to, if we accelerated the opening of the K6, those kids wouldn't have to go anywhere, right? So obviously when a school closes, our primary concern, excuse me, are the kids, making sure that they get located in a space that works for them, and staff as well. And when we came back to the board after having some discussion with them about accelerating, obviously they were already there, it's their building. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, would you guys consider, accelerating our K6? We already planned to do it. Yes, this is really fast, but would you consider to do it? And then in May, we approved them opening a K6, and they absorbed, and they'll tell you probably the exact number, a good portion of those Indy STEAM students and a very high portion of the teachers. So there was consistency for those kids. Yes, the uniforms may have changed a little, but the reality of it is they stayed in the same building with a lot of the same teachers. The downside of that from a renewal perspective is that school's essentially been open a year or less than a year, which is the reason for the change in the renewal recommendation, recognizing that, we approved initially a high school and now it's a K-12. And so at this point, I think what we're going to do is recommend a 7-year renewal for the whole thing and then let things percolate a little bit. And that'll give us enough time to sort of see how the K6 is going. So with that as a background, I'm now going to go into the recommendation. They're in Indianapolis. They have a very high FRL population and a very high minority population, as I state in the recommendation. However, their attendance rate has not been bad compared to the state average, and their chronic absenteeism has actually been great. It's 37.5%, which is basically the IPS average, which is much lower than many of our schools. They only have 1 year of data, and these are for students that transferred from Indy STEAM to Geo. We closed Indy STEAM for a reason. The students' proficiency in the first year or when they opened 7-8, they had transfer students 1 year data. That's what we have. We don't actually have any data for the Indy STEAM students yet because they just transferred this year. But the data for the middle school, because they were starting from top down, were all transfer students. So the 1 year data we have is not great. And as you can see, 8% were proficient in LA and 0% were proficient in math. I think there were 30 students that made that class. Obviously, that's not great. And one more reason why maybe we want to consider this 7-year renewal to give them more time to see, because those students were not in their system prior to. I mean, they got 7th and 8th graders who had been K-6 somewhere else. And that's always sometimes a difficulty because you're getting students that typically are behind. So with this, recognizing that we're going from this high school to a middle school to an elementary school, one of the things they did is hired a regional director, Dr. Anita Silverman, who is a former director of education for DCS and has a lot of experience with charter schools and curriculum and things like that, to basically come in and oversee the school, oversee academic interventions for the school. Obviously, because the K-6, they're taking students from in STEAM and it's new, the middle school is new, it's going to be a year before you start feeding students into it. They really needed someone there to do sort of targeted interventions. And that's really the point, is that they are moving toward very much evaluating the student body that they have, that they inherited basically, and planning interventions accordingly. So from our perspective as an authorizer, what we will do is continue to monitor their academic performance over the course of a couple of years, firmly believing that right now we can't make any call on the performance, but in 2 or 3 years, we might be able to see trends. So when we come back in 7 years, we'll be able to tell you whether it's working or not. That's on the K-8 side. We do have academic data for the high school. In its first 3 years of operation, they graduated 76 students. The 3-year grad rate's 84.5. Their 22 and 23 grad rates exceeded the IPS grad rate by 6 and 4% at 86%. Graduation rates have not been officially released for 23-24, but we have them at 84%. So pretty high grad rate. SAT performance. And this is where we need to have a little discussion about SAT. And this is a personal sort of observation of mine about, so the SAT wasn't required until 2022. So you have many, many high schools that just didn't offer it at all. It was optional. Students had to pay for courses outside of, if they were going to take them, test prep, which as we all know is very critical to SAT success. It's test prep, exposure to that kind of test, and the ability to retake the test, of which typically, historically, this demographic did not have access. So when SAT dropped in and became mandatory, it's a bit of a shock. Students, even though they've taken the IMER, and the SAT is a whole sort of different beast. And so initial performance is pretty low in a lot of schools in our portfolio, a lot of schools in IPS. Their English performance in 2022 was actually higher than IPS. It's dropped a little bit every year, but on the EBRW part, they're still less than 1% than the IPS average, which is great. Math performance is an issue for most schools. It's now at 3%, but that's still only 3% less than IPS. I mean, IPS average is 6% in math SAT. And I'm not trying to excuse this, but I think a lot of the reason is that many of the schools and many of the students in IPS high schools don't view this SAT with the same sort of, it's something they have to do. It's something they're required to take, and maybe they take a prep course, maybe they don't. It's a requirement for graduation, but it's not really relevant to what they're doing post-graduation. As you can see from the stats, 33 students graduated in 21 and 22, but only 6 attended college that even required the SAT. The numbers are different at other high schools. I think JRPLA, we have similar statistics. So it's again, I'm not justifying, I don't want to justify poor performance on this test. I think it's a little too early to really put much stock in it because it's only been required for like 2-3 years. And it is, I mean, I've taken the SAT My kids are taking the SAT now. I mean, it's hard. And they have lots of test prep and it's still hard. So to me, I'm not even sure how good of a metric it is for accountability purposes at this point. We put it in there because of the data we have. So I'm only having this conversation now. I should have had, Purdue, obviously there's an outlier. They're doing great on the SAT. And hopefully we all get there. But I think it's going to take a little time to get kids used to it, to get them to understand that they can apply to schools that require the SAT as schools start to bring the SAT back. I'm not even sure how many still require it. So it's one of those things where you're a kid who's being told you have to take this test that means nothing. So how hard are you going to try it? I mean, that's just something I've observed. You guys can believe differently, but I just wanted to raise that as an observation, looking at schools in these areas, IPS and Gary and South Bend and Fort Wayne. Finally, and that was a little longer of a chat, so I don't have to have it with JRP HS. So the last thing I want to say is, they really focus on college and workforce readiness. That's the GEO thing. That's what they do at all of their schools. And as you can see in 2024, some data they provided us, 1 student graduated with the full associate's degree, 12 graduated with the Indiana College Core, which was mentioned earlier at Excel, and 28 graduated with college credits. 1 actually graduated with career certification and an acceptance with a college scholarship to a 4-year university. So almost 40% of the graduates have this extra. So with that, oh shit, I didn't talk about financial. My apologies. I'm running my throat. I need to get water. It's a lot of talking. So GeoCategories is managed by the Geo Foundation, which is a tax-exempt nonprofit entity that's been around for a long time, 2 decades. Has been providing services to charter schools. They charge administrative per student fees in exchange for all the management, operation, administration, and payroll. The management fee, part of the agreement, is $250,000, which is pretty well below market rate. Typically, it's a percentage, and the percentage can be from sort of reasonable to ridiculous. Some are 20%, 15%. Of total enrollment, which is a lot more than $250,000. Like some of the other schools in this renewal, the ones who are up for their first renewal, they opened during the pandemic. So they had very low enrollment the first year, almost doubled in the second year, dropped a little in the third year. And then once they moved to added 7-8, increased again 200 students. So this is well below what they had hoped. Obviously, the pandemic had a big impact on that. They're now over 400, I believe, with the addition of the K6, and are, now that they have this full grade span, are very optimistic that they can increase that enrollment substantially. It's nice that they have the facility, the buildings are literally right next to each other. Brothers and sisters and siblings now can go from all grades. So there's a lot of it. It's one of the few K-12s left in the city. So they have a lot going for them in terms of their enrollment projections. Now, I would be the first to admit that the enrollment projections in their application are very optimistic, but even if we split the difference, we're pretty good. So again, because of the very low enrollment, their finances were not great. Individual schools' finances were not great during the first couple of years. Currently, they're both their net asset position and their change in assets are negative. However, GEO, because it's a nonprofit mission-oriented organization, a lot of the expenses are payables to the foundation for operating. The foundation recently forgave $1 million to the school as a result of this sort of low enrollment situation, and they're positioned to do that again if they have to. Again, it's a similar situation to both PLA and the Excel networks and Purdue. It's a nonprofit network that operates schools that is able to provide financial support for these schools if they need it. And keep in mind that the enrollment has now more than doubled. So again, we'll be monitoring the finances. Our expectation is that the finances will improve as they start to be able to leverage having both schools, operating both schools. The other thing is that subsequent to the submission of the application, they found out that they were awarded a CSP grant for $2 million, which is great over 2 years. The budget that they submitted actually did not reflect that properly. They left off $1 million. So, oops. So in actuality, their projected budget for the next 5 years actually shows annual surpluses, fairly decent annual surpluses over the next 5 years. Now they're enrollment driven. So those surpluses may decrease as enrollment doesn't hit the targets, but the enrollment projections are largely, the expenses are largely tied up in instructional staff. So it's fairly easy to adjust your your expected expenses with instructional staff if enrollment doesn't meet the targets that they're seeking. So again, as I said, the bottom line is if there's a deficiency that they can't manage, a bill that they can't pay, Geo Foundation is there to step in. And, with all networks, if networks manage, I mean, they may think in a different way as nonprofits. I mean, they're not operated as for-profit healthcare companies, for example. They're not in it to make the extra, they're not looking to shave off the dollars. They're in it for mission. That's part of their mission. They're C3s but they still have to operate as an entity, an ongoing entity. And as part of our ongoing monitoring, we also monitor the network. So if we see signs that there may be network level issues, because we have so many Geo schools, it's easier for us to tell how things are operating. So that's something that we look into. So as of now, despite the school's individual struggles, we don't have any concerns for now, and we feel confident we can monitor it going into the next 7 years. So with that, I do want to note that public comments, which we did not print out because it was pretty big, 100 and some 30 pages or something. Geo did receive comments from students that were, I would characterize as negative. However, as an authorizer, the issues that were raised by those students are not something that we have any cognizance of. In other words, we have not received complaints from DOE or any other monitoring entity that indicate that these complaints are a chronic problem, with EL or with discipline. As I said, as a matter of their chronic absenteeism rate is super low, and we have not seen any issues with the culture there. Obviously, it's a bit chaotic as you integrate this new school, but separate buildings, the students don't interact. So I think the student said what the student said. I could say as an authorizer that these do not appear to be chronic problems that we're hearing about from either parents or the DOE. So for what that's worth. And now I will.
Let me just make sure there are no questions for James before
Okay.
we shift over to
Any
the
questions
school
for me?
representatives. Any questions for James from members of the board? Okay, thanks, James, very much. We'll welcome the representatives from the school to come up. I would just ask that you introduce yourself and share your role in the school, and then limit your comments to 10 minutes. I'll give you kind of the high sign if we get to minute 9. So welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. And good afternoon. Thank you for having us today. We're very excited to be here in front of you again. I'm Dana Teasley. I serve as superintendent of schools for Geo Academies. I also serve as the president of Geo Foundation, the nonprofit operator. So I wear both hats and can see things from both angles, which is pretty helpful. Today, I have with us, as James mentioned, Dr. Anita Silverman. Dr. Silverman has been in urban education in Indianapolis for most of her career. Ms. Tiffany Evans, our extraordinary high school principal, who has been with us since the very beginning and the school opened. She has worked up through the ranks. She did not start as principal, but she has earned that role. And she has absolutely been our rock through many of the transitions brought on through COVID and slow growth. And we're also delighted this year we added on Leanne Kokenberg as our elementary principal. However, Leanne actually has been with Geo Foundation for 10 years before moving over into the principal role. So she's very experienced with our model. So we're very delighted. Overall, as James said, and as you pointed out, yes, it has been an unexpected 5 years. We started out 9-12. We expanded once based on demand from parents and the need to understand we want to bring students in earlier, have more time with them to remediate before they jump into our college and career programming. So we did that. And then the K-6 opportunity came up. I absolutely have to shout out Ms. Kokenberg and her team, because as you mentioned, we got the approval in May. They reached out to teachers, they reached out to families, and they had over 200 students and were fully staffed, give or take maybe one or two, including a lot of the folks from STEAM, as James mentioned, in about 2.5 months. So that was an extraordinary lift. I don't think anybody slept all summer. I think James could tell you, he and the team have walked through the culture in that building is extraordinary, and we're very excited to see where it goes. The 7th and 8th, as James mentioned, has absolutely been a bit of a challenge. We got students in from all over. Last year was our first year with them. We recognize that the performance wasn't great. We're very much working on growth. And that is our big focus, particularly for our 7th and 8th students that are coming in there. 9 through 12 has been amazing. We're super excited about all of it. A few hot spots. So as we've talked about, our model is college and career. We definitely have a career focus, and I'll let Dr. Silverman and Ms. Evans talk about that. But basically what has happened is, if you look at the SAT parts, as I 100% agree with James, the state and the feds care an awful lot about SAT as a measurement under federal law. We get that. Students don't care. And they particularly don't care in our model, because we are offering them really fantastic career and college opportunities that don't require the SAT. We had one student, as James mentioned, graduate last year with their associate degree. That number continues to grow. This year, we have 5 students graduating with an associate degree. 4 of them are ELL learners, and that is pretty extraordinary. Those students didn't need the SAT to get that degree. We also have, as I said, a lot of career pathways, pharmacy, truck driver, much more as well. So those don't require the SAT. Kids don't care. That said, we do recognize it is still an important metric and still an important measurement. And we are working to help kids understand, let's do your best. It'll open up more doors for you. Whether you choose to use them or not, that will be up to you, but at least you will have that in your backpack. So we are working on that. Financially, as James noted, we definitely started out slow. We've had two school starts. The first was the 9 through 12. Second, of course, was the K-6, 7, 8, kind of in the middle. When the 9 through 12 started, the federal startup funding and the state federal startup funding was not there. Now it is. So as we restart this K-6, as James mentioned, we have the $2 million startup. Yep, we did leave $1 million off. We were trying to be conservative until we got it. So we were happy about that. So yes, so we've got that startup, but we also have Geo Foundation has a national federal startup grant and for several of its schools, and it included Geo Next Gen Academy in that. So there are additional dollars that are in the budget for the next several years to continue to support this school as it grows until it reaches sustainable enrollment levels. And that is typical for schools. Those types of funds were not available when the first start happened. And so Geo Foundation stepped in to cover that gap. And as James mentioned, we just forgave $1 million, basically $1 million grant to the school. So we're very delighted about all of that as well. I think I kind of addressed kind of the initial questions. And I guess I'll leave it to y'all for questions.
I think
Great,
you
come on.
I bet they will probably be able to answer your questions.
Come on up. Feel free. And if you'd like to offer any comments, go ahead. That would be fine.
Please do.
So I'll speak on the SAT portion. As everybody has kind of beat that to the ground. The one thing we're doing in the school is making it to where SAT is fun and they know that scholars know their information. So we took the first round and so had a whole conversation with students. Listen, this is required for graduation. If you do not get these scores, these benchmarks, you will not graduate. And having them know their scores, be responsible for their scores, know when testing is coming. We also have SAT classes for all of our 11th grade scholars. We have tutoring programs for them and other interventions that we take as well. So yes, we have college and we have the courses that don't require the SAT. However, it is important to us still. There is 100% SAT focused and they are excited. Like when is the next time I can get an SAT? Because I want to get my scores better. I want to make sure I hit this because I have to graduate. I have to do this and I have to do that. So with the data that we have, we're anticipating a lot of growth because of the excitement that the students have for it now.
Great, thank you. Other comments?
I think I'll add one thing. During our
Just
summer
step up.
professional development, we also trained our teachers about the SAT. How in the math, module 1 has changed. And they have to get through module 1 to get through module 2. We taught our teachers how to write SAT style questions for exit tickets. Because even if you teach science or social studies or health, all that goes into the SAT, even if it doesn't say social studies. So our teachers went through training this summer on the SAT, and that we can prepare kids to see those questions across the dashboard in our buildings.
Great. Okay, we'll shift to questions. If you would all stay up here. We'll open it up for members of the board who have questions. Let me start with those folks who are in the room. Questions?
I do have two.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I commend you for offering this opportunity to an entire school full of students. In that, you certainly are the special forces of education. So thank you for that. I'm fascinated with student perspective. So my first question has to do with acknowledgement of the student comments that came in with your application or for renewal. And so if you were discussing student perspective as a leadership team, knowing that's a variety of different opinions and thoughts regarding your school, what is one question that you would ask yourself as a leadership team if you were as curious about student perspective as I am?
I think the one thing, and we started thinking about this summer, was the culture of our K-12. We knew because of where our location was, we were going to serve a diverse population, mostly by languages. You know, we are a 52% English language learner school. So we have to address that. You know, part of our tutoring program is with Khan Academy and Conmingo. If you're not familiar with Conmingo, it translates to about any language you could ask for. And we have a large Haitian Creole population that some speak French, some speak Haitian Creole, and some speak Spanish. You know, the other thing is our staff and the diversity in our staff. Our staff, we have staff members that speak Haitian Creole. We have staff members that speak Spanish. So if we can't help our students, we have staff member that can. We also have students that are part of the IMAP program that this summer they helped with our enrollment because one spoke Spanish and one spoke Haitian Creole. So creating that culture that welcomes all students, you know, our staff is very diverse, Haitian, Spanish, Middle Eastern, African-American, Caucasian. So having that diversity, it makes a very welcoming environment for our students.
So your question would be about your student or your school culture.
Because if you have a strong culture,
Yeah.
then you get buy-in from the beginning from the
Okay.
parents, and then that leads to great academics.
Wonderful. Here's the second question.
Very short follow-up to that.
Please.
Not about the school culture itself, but I just want to say, we haven't seen the comments themselves, so we're sort of shooting in the dark a little bit to make sure we address them well. But my understanding is we got more positive comments than negative ones. Certainly negative ones that need to be addressed, but the legal nerd in me is super excited that positive or negative students advocated for themselves and got their voices heard. And regardless of what they said, I think that is super cool. And I think that absolutely says a lot about our leadership, that our students felt comfortable doing that.
Thank you.
And now the leader has to speak. So, and I wanted to come to say the biggest thing that our building has in both our buildings is relationship with scholars. So my question would be, what do the students want? What do they need? Did we ask them? How do we go about asking them? Because if we're just shooting in the dark and saying, hey, this is what we're going to give to them, and it's not important because it's not what they really intrinsically want. So what do they want? What do they need? And how can we support them in what they need?
Those are all powerful, especially the third one. Did we ask them?
Did we ask?
Wow. Okay, here's the very quick second question. So my information says your high school model is an enhanced college prep focused on college experience and workforce readiness. So now that you have two buildings with an elementary program that ideally would walk into your secondary experience, if you were talking to your early elementary students, how would you define college? And then secondly, what will you do uniquely in late L to prepare them for your transition into your secondary school?
So I wish you could have been in our elementary building during College Go Week.
Man, why don't you talk about that?
Because College Go Week was an incredible event in the elementary building.
Yeah. So one of the great things about our campus is the high school kids can actually come over to the elementary school and support those students. The Ivy Tech kids come with their college sweatshirts on and their college gear on. So it's extremely exciting when the big kids come over, and actually the little kids want to go over there to the big school. So we learned during college week, what is college? What is this thing these kids are going to? So we spent a good week learning about College Go and specifically Indiana schools. And what is it? What is a Purdue? What is an IU? What does it take? What do you want to grow up to be? In August, we did a whole week about heroes. For example, what does it take to be a doctor? So a doctor came in and spoke to the third grade teachers or the students. And then that led into how to go to college. What does it mean to be a firefighter? What does it mean to be all of these careers that are out there? What is it that I have to do as a student to become that career? So we've embraced the college in the elementary. The kids are excited to see the college kids come over. The college kids are excited to come over to support the K6, K5 students. And we have KLR, which is another career organization that supports our kids in pharmacy tech and those kind of careers. They had a career fair at our building and in our gymnasium. And the fifth graders got to go into this career fair to see their booths about being a veterinary tech, being a nursing assistant, being a dental technician. And they got to see, look at this career opportunity. I now know that when I get to that building, I have that opportunity. So kids are extremely excited about going to the 612 building to have an opportunity to get to college for free. Because the other thing that was very funny is the kids were like, you have to pay for that? Yeah, you have to pay for college. But if you stay, we pay for it. And so the fifth graders thought that was like the coolest thing since sliced bread.
Can I ask a question since you are here at the mic? So you all absorbed many of the students from a school that unfortunately we had to close or revoke the charter of.
Yes.
The academics were okay at that school. They certainly weren't the worst that we had seen. However, I'm just curious, how are you tackling remediation or sort of meeting each student where they are and where they came from, academically? How are you getting them up to grade level and proficiency?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. We absorbed, as you had mentioned, several of the STEAM students and the STEAM faculty, which is a blessing because those faculty know those students and the parents know the faculty, and it just melded beautifully. We have a third grade is a big grade for passing iRead. So we have a Ignite grant through Mindtrust. So we have a group of kids every day from 3 to 3:15 taking tutoring, very intensive tutoring online. We also have a built-in success time at the end of the day for remediation and reteaching. So we are looking at the data that we are gathering weekly with exit tickets. We are also looking at the data that we are gathering through checkpoints because we did opt into the checkpoints for the Indiana Department of Ed. I learned, yay. And we also have iReady as a marker to figure out, to determine how are we progressing kindergarten through second grade. So we are taking the data, we're looking at it weekly, we're adjusting. We have, it took 1.5 miles to turn around the Titanic. So we are what we need is time. So we are looking at those students, digging deep in. We are finding huge gaps, especially in phonics. So we have embraced the science of reading. And we, every teacher is being taught the science of reading and how to explicitly teach reading. So we're teaching teachers as they're teaching the students, and we're having the best time.
That's
We are
great.
having so much fun.
Thank you.
You're very
That's great.
welcome.
Let me open it up to the board members who are participating online. Any questions from members of the board online?
I wanted to ask how you support the maintenance of the language skills of these folks who are speaking other languages than English.
We have hired a new ELL teacher, so she is learning the skill set of being the support to the English language learners. We also use our translators in the building. Our high school Ivy Tech kids often go and work as classroom supports in our elementary, and many of our college students in the high school are English language learners themselves that are now can speak 2 languages, and some of our kids 3. So we're going many different avenues to reach those kids, along with some community supports.
I was really asking a different question, I think.
Sorry.
So we know it's important to be able to be proficient in English, but I would love it that they maintain their skills in French, their skills in whatever other languages that they're speaking, because those have value in the marketplace too. So do you have a program that actually promotes the maintenance of their native languages? Or is the emphasis just let's get you guys up to speed on English? And that's not a criticism if that's the case. I'm just wondering.
You know, in our high school level, a lot of these kids continue their languages at the college level and getting college credits for it. So they can do a test out. For example, if you in high school Spanish 3 translates to Ivy Tech first year Spanish, and so they can do a test out. So we also agree that this can continue throughout their adult life, knowing these languages. And we work with some of our community partners too. We have a new partner at IU Indy that is has reached out to work with our Haitian students, and it's also part of Freetown. So it's a great partnership.
And then the other question is, for the high school students in particular, what are you doing about considering the changes in the marketplace that are being driven really fast by AI and other technology related to AI? I went to a presentation yesterday and it was astounding that the kinds of jobs that we're going to have in the near future will be very different from what we are preparing for right now. Do you have anybody on your staff? And I could have asked everybody who presented this question. I just thought of it when you were presenting.
Okay, so we can do it together, but one of the things we're looking at is working with Project Lead the Way to incorporate more STEM, and one of their computer science pathway, which would lead to a career certification, includes AI as part of their coursework. So, and as in the new graduation requirements, computer science is part of that requirement now that has to be done. And so we're just kind of once again doing it early and looking at adding those components to our high school.
It's very simple. Very simple. Sometimes we see the new thing and want to take it away instead of leaning in. So we have to research the things that are good to lean in, to use it to our advantage. And that's what we're looking to, instead of, we do have the cell phone ban. So how can we put things on Chromebooks? Or how can we incorporate AI into our lessons to make it as if we're not banning AI and saying it's really bad, but there's a lot of great things with it. So we lean in and we make do with our Chromebooks instead of cell phones, because cell phones are great, but we're leaning into AI.
Do the high school students also use Conmigo?
That's new. We're getting into it.
Okay.
We're starting that next semester.
Good,
Yep.
great. Other questions online? Okay, seeing none? Any in the room? No? Thank you very much. You may be seated. We appreciate your time. James, anything else from you before we move to a vote?
Nope, just a reminder that the recommendation is for a 7-year renewal.
Okay,
Not
so
bad.
we have a staff recommendation of a 7-year charter renewal for Geo Next Gen Academy. Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, any second? I'll second it. Okay, we'll go through and roll call vote.
Everybody's asleep.
Okay, Board Member Hawkins,
Yes.
Board Member Jositis.
You're muted.
You might,
Yes.
oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Board Member Schultz is recusing herself.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you. Board Member Green.
Yes.
Great. Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I am also yes. Congratulations to Geo Next Gen. Thank you very much. Okay, we will do a very quick transition here. We're going to get started with the Phelan Leadership Academy block in just about 60 seconds. So if you all want to come up to the front row, we'll make this transition. James, would you also sort of preview for the
Yes.
board how we are going
Yes.
to kind of approach these? We have
I
3
will.
goals here.
Okay, so after some internal discussion, I think what we're going to do here, because there are a lot of overlap in the network part of the discussion for these schools, that what I'm going to do is start with sort of an overall financial discussion of the schools and the network and sort of blend them all together. And then when I'm done with that, what we'll do is we'll move on to each individual school in the agenda order. So 48, then 103, then the high school, and talk about academics and then vote, academics, vote, academics, vote. I think that's probably the quickest way to get through this and not have to reiterate over and over again the network financial discussion. So I'm going to start with finances. So actually, 103 is the one I think that I started with the most discussion. So let me go back to 103. Okay. So the Phelan Network. So Phelan Leadership Academies, Indiana has 7 Indiana schools. I would say 7 Indiana direct managed schools, including 103, 48, and the high school, the 3 schools that are up for renewal today. PLA, and you can see this in the 103 discussion, they reimburse their parent company, which is called EVE, Educational Entrepreneurial Ventures in Education. Sorry, it's a mouthful, which is also a tax exempt nonprofit corporation. So the whole network is tax exempt nonprofit for management services. Because this gets a little confusing, I'm just going to call the whole thing the network, the PLA network. So there is a state statute that was passed, I don't know how many years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago, that allows charter organizers, and in this case, PLA, Indiana is the holder of all the charters, to get paid and manage money at the network level. So Indiana law specifically permits this. And so what they use is what we refer to as an upstream model. So cash gets it moves away from the direct school. So when we were having the network discussion, the financial metrics, it's very difficult to slot the Phelan schools into our financial metrics because the financial metrics are very individual school based and don't factor in this upstreaming model, which sometimes can skew the metrics in a way that tends to look negative as money sort of gets moved around. And actually, maybe I'll start with 103 because that's a good example of a school that has intercompany receivables. So with the network in particular, it's critically important that we look at the network. Because in the end, the individual school's financial ability to make ends meet should there be a deficiency is at the network level. So we looked at the network financial metrics. We looked at the audited data, which of course only goes to 2023. And from 2022, 23, their assets increased by 33%, liabilities increased by 77%. And so the network asset position decreased, but it's still almost $12 million for the network. So during the same time period, this is in 22 to 23, operating revenues and expenses increased. So their net assets decreased, and it's actually in the negative now for the first time. So we requested preliminary unaudited data for the 2024 season because we couldn't get the audit. Next best thing is what they provided the auditors. So the 2024 unaudited data has 50.5 in operating revenue against 48.9 in expense, which results in a actual positive net income, which is an increase from the negative. And then there's a decrease in both total assets and total liabilities, which puts them basically in the same net asset position as 2023. So in other words, 2024 flipped the net income to positive from negative. So good thing we had the unaudited data. So let's see here. So for this, and this is why it gets screwy with the school. So for example, for the school, total assets decreased to 450,000, while total liabilities decreased to a negative 8 million. Now that confused me at first, and I'm pretty good with finances. What that means exactly is that the school has intercompany receivables due to it in that amount. So again, that's not going to help their cash position, right? Because you got negative $8 million in liabilities, means that people owe you the money, but you don't have it. So it illustrates why it's really difficult to look at the school's finances. Now they're changing that their assets. Sorry. So, but the school during the same time period, the revenue increased while operating by 10, operating expenses increased by 13%, but their change in assets is still positive. So at the school level, they're still okay, even though they have these wonky numbers on their books related to intercompany receivables. And they can just carry those because at some point the network can reconcile them. So it does make it a little harder to read the audit. Let's see here. So when I look at we'll start with just the 103 discussion real quick. So when you look at their actual the metrics that matter, their enrollment has been pretty consistent. It's increased almost every year. They're up to 689 students. It's a big school. I think their cap at that school is 700. So their enrollment is really, really good, which has helped operating revenue. The other thing, just to give you an example about 103 and where enrollment drives everything. So their enrollment, they're almost maxed out in terms of but they've reached a point where they can operate sustainably, except, and this is the other thing I want to say about the PLA network. And this is we had an interesting discussion about this yesterday in the NACSA call, because what they do, again, as a mission, they raise a lot of dollars. They get a lot of philanthropic funding. It's part of the model. They're a 501c3. That's what they do. With that money, they provide a lot of extra services to their schools. These would be services that would not be sustainable using state funding alone. But their model has these sort of services baked in. The reason now, folks are like, whoa, if it's not a sustainable model, how can we do this? Yada, yada. But the reason that we don't really have a concern or we monitor this differently is that because these are extra services, they're not, and it's the same with ESSER funds. You don't pay for 8 permanent positions with ESSER funds because once the ESSER funds go away, you can't pay for those positions anymore. However, if you have additional services, additional interventionists, additional deans or principals to promote culture, these are positions that are predicated on your ability to pay for them, but they're not core to the provision of the basic educational system. Now, I've had sort of really open conversations with Earl about this, that if you ever get to the point where your philanthropy doesn't allow you to provide these services, what do? Well, you either choose to provide the basic model of education that the state and federal dollars allow you to do, or you stop operating charter schools because you can't provide the model you want to provide. Now, obviously, we're not there, but I think that illustrates sort of what PLA is trying to do, like why it's so critical, why the philanthropy is so critical, because these extra services are critical. A lot of it is about, I'll give the JRPLA building, for example, on the east side. That is a culture, that is a community center. People use that building in the community. It's like it's a locus point for athletics, for performances, for all sorts of things that they've built over there. And part of it, it's all philanthropy, the athletic field, philanthropy, like all these other things, philanthropy, but it's a core mission for PLA to be able to have the community be a real part of the schools. So yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's probably not something that would be sustainable on federal and state dollars. But yes, I'm okay with it because the way they've designed their support is that should we ever get to the point where that money dries up, this extra support goes away, but the school still remains. I mean, this is not a case where a school is relying on paying salaries. And if they don't get philanthropic dollars, they can't pay salaries. That's not what's happening here. Yes, a few positions will leave, but those positions were extra to begin with. So that's really why I want to have a discussion about the network, because this is across all of the schools. I mentioned the high school in particular, because that's, a real locus for PLA, or for PLA, but the other schools as well, same thing. All these interventions, all these special services, 103, 93, 48, all of the schools. So from a financial standpoint, from a for-profit standpoint, would you say this is a sustainable model? No. From a nonprofit standpoint, with a background in nonprofit and government tax law, am comfortable with this position because I believe that the way they've structured the funding, that it wouldn't be critical. Yes, they would provide less services. It might be a less robust model, but they're not going to close if they don't get philanthropy. So that's sort of my overall discussion about the network. Now, I think maybe what we should do now is have let's just start with 103 because I already started about 103. So really quickly, just to wrap up the financial thing from 103, their 5-year budget, as I said, sort of the revenue is sort of flatlined at a very low amount, but that's the way the network model works, right? The way the money is distributed is so that all schools just kind of break even, right? No schools building a surplus because that surplus is then being used to fund other things. And that's a feature, not a bug. Now, really quick, I'm going to go back to academics for 103, if that's okay, and we can just finish doing 103. So 103 was the first ever innovation network school. IPS basically approached PLA in 2015 to turn around Francis Scott Key at School 103. And at the time, one of the worst performing schools in the district. And PLA went in sort of as the first innovation school. So kind of like the trailblazer in this space. The agreement was renewed in 2019. And again, just recently in 2024. The current contract with IPS, and by currently, I mean within the last couple of weeks. The current contract runs through 2930. So their population is predominantly low income, predominantly minority, both has more FRL students, more Black students, and more English language students than the IPS average, significantly more. One of the other things I want to point out about because we did a little analysis here, and we've mentioned the Haitian Creole population a couple of times now, but there has been a significant increase in that population in the last couple of years. We did a review of the PLA schools alone. In the PLA network schools, so 93, the high school, 103, the middle school, Promise Prep, GBPLA, PLA 48, by our numbers, by our count, they have 450 Haitian students, which is a lot in some of those schools. The percentage is very high. And ironically, there are more Haitian students in the PLA network than any other country, including the South American countries. That is their #1 ML population. So there are other schools in IPS that are seeing this as well. But again, when you have a school that serves that population, that has people who speak Haitian Creole or French, families talk, you get more of that population. It's a good thing. So the preliminary data for 2025 indicates that the population there is now close to 70%, which is 40% higher than the state average. And a 40% increase over where they were a couple of years ago. So they've really had to shift a lot of things to accommodate the student population. Their attendance rate has been fairly steady in the high 80s. Chronic absenteeism has dropped fairly significantly to 48% in 2024, which is slightly above the IPS average, but still pretty good for this population. So their ELA proficiency has been a bit of a mixed bag. It's dropped over the last couple of years. I think a lot of that probably has to do with the influx of English language learner students. Math proficiency similarly has fluctuated, but it's risen each year in the last 3 years. And actually PLA schools, particularly 93, are producing some of the highest scores in math in IPS. And one of the things I think they're going to talk about, the network is, and we've seen this as the operator of all these schools, the network has finally figured out how to get all the schools under one umbrella. I think it's been a struggle sometimes, some personality, some logistics, but the schools are now operating under sort of this one consistent, vertically and horizontally integrated umbrella, and including things like taking 93's really successful math program and trying to integrate it into the other schools, which is what we wanted. We want charter schools to do. We want them to take best practices and integrate them. And we're starting to really see this with the PLA school. But so their math was at 14% in 2024, which was slightly lower than the IPS average. iRead needs some work. The iRead has dropped in 2023 to 45 and went up to 53 in 24, which is 7% lower than IPS, but again, is probably attributable to the high ML population. But as you can see, and I'm not going to go into this, IPS does its own academic review, and I provide you a link to the report. They have access to more data than we do, specifically growth data, which we don't have access to. So working on that with the DOE in a couple of years. Hopefully at some point it'll work out. But there's a list there of the where IPS cited where PLA 103 actually outperformed the LEA, and a lot of it is really specific data. I'm not going to read it. You know, it's like the percentage of Black students meeting math growth targets, right? It's really specific academic data. But there were a lot of places where 103s outperformed the LEA with specific groups, and specifically Black students, Hispanic students, and in math proficiency and FRL students. Mm-hmm. So all of that is what IPS cited for their reason for renewing the school. So with that, I'm going to say I'm done with I think what I'm going to, you know, the network's been great to work with. We've known them forever. As far as compliance, they're one of the more compliant, one of the more easy schools to talk to. I have frequent conversations with their CFO about financial things. They're very responsive. Nicole is super responsive. Text her on the weekends if I need to. Try not to, but I could. So it's been a real pleasure working with the network. As I said, we've developed a real relationship with them. And with that, let's go with the first PLA school, right? We're recommending a 10-year renewal as their second renewal with us. And should we wait for Beth? Assume.
No, she asked that we proceed forward. So if you
Okay,
guys want to
great.
come up and share your comments, we would appreciate that for sure. I
So
feel like
one of the reasons we're talking about now.
Okay, we'll be brief.
you're fine.
Mr. Reimer, if you want to join me, Mr. Reimer is the principal. My name is Nicole Fong. I'm the executive director, serving in a dual role. So I work primarily at the high school, but also oversee all of the schools in Indianapolis. To piggyback on what James said, for the first year, we're really confident that we've taken all the best practices across the network. All the schools are on the same curriculum at this point, which is fantastic. All of the schools are operating on the same calendar, same testing schedule. And it's going incredibly well. We have had some shifts, but Mr. Reimer has been at 103 for how many years? 7 or 8, and was with us when we became an innovation school. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Reimer for 103.
Thank you.
Got about 3 minutes. So.
Great. Take them all.
So PLA 103 is a great school. If my children were younger, I wouldn't hesitate to send them there. Anyone who walks through the building would feel a sense of pride and positive school atmosphere. This has not always been the case, as Francis Scott Key, as James had said. This was one of the worst schools in elementary schools in IPS. And I can only speak to the PLA 103 that I know. I transitioned as the building principal mid-year during 2018-19. So it was about Christmas time, about a week before Christmas that year. At that time, scholar behavior was an issue. I was given a list of probably more than 50 high flyers when I arrived. Today, that list of high flyers is less than 5. The current 6th grade class, they were in kindergarten when I got there. So one of the first things that we implemented when I arrived was PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, focusing on positive scholar behavior and creating numerous school-wide initiatives that has made quite a difference and has led to a very positive school climate. Just looking at scholar and staff attendance, James said about 89%, we're about 90% for both, or for scholar attendance. One can assume that they both, scholars and staff, enjoy coming to school every day. I know I do. Once we were able to create a stable, positive atmosphere, we knew that this next step was to focus on academics. We took a deep dive into grade level and scholar data, and we noted that our scholars were anywhere from 1 to 3 years behind their peers across Indiana, specifically in writing. We were lucky if our 6th graders could write more than a few sentences. It wasn't only in writing that our scholars showed deficits, it was across the academic spectrum. With a strong leadership team and hiring some really talented teachers, we began to focus on high quality professional development, created both by Phelan and by our own staff. We knew it was important to be strategic and intentional when planning professional development opportunities that teachers could take back to their classrooms and implement with their scholars. At first, we began showing teachers how to use their weekly and summative assessments to form small groups. Small group instruction leads to increased scholar engagement and allows the teachers the opportunity to provide personalized feedback. We do know that all scholars have to be exposed to grade level content, but we also know that in order for scholars to catch up to their peers, learning must be different and individualized. As I stated earlier, PLA 103 is a great school, and one could look at our enrollment and see that the community supports PLA 103. Phelan, as James had said, began their innovation during the 2015-16 school year, and at that time, PLA ADM count was about 314 scholars. We're bursting now. We are packed full. We are. The total school capacity is about 742, and we were at 689 for this fall's ADM. Demographics, 53% Black students, 41% Hispanic, 2% white, 66% ELs or MLs, 7% special education. We have about 75 staff members, 27 classrooms. 73% of our staff are white, 24% are Black, 2% are Hispanic. Class sizes average about 26 to 27 scholars per classroom. And during the 2018-19 school year, PLA had a total of about 75 EL scholars. That's when I got there. No Haitian scholars at that time. Today, that number is about 460. So it's really changed. While our EL population has exploded, Phelan has also allowed PLA 103 to increase the level of support. We currently have 7 EL teachers and 2 bilingual assistants. Our front office staff consists of a front office manager who's bilingual in Spanish and a front office support staff who's trilingual in Creole, Spanish, and English. Our PLA enrollment coordinator is also bilingual in Spanish. And due to the increase in EL families that attend PLA 103 over the last several years, we have focused a lot of our professional development on EL strategies to support classroom instruction. So if you've heard of SIOP or Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, it has a framework of 8 different components, which are just good teaching strategies. We've been working for a good 3 years to work with our teachers so they can deliver that instruction that's helpful, even with the EL teachers who do some push in and pull out at the time. Just a quick little story. We had a really good 3rd grade teacher. She was young. And it was when our population was growing, but not where we are now. And about a third of her students spoke Spanish. And she was in tears, crying. She's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to reach them. They don't understand me. With our population where it is now, our teachers aren't crying. Like they think they feel confident that they can provide the instruction that they need, which I think is important. Some of the things where we're going, we started, we've been COGAT testing for our high ability scholars for several years. We now have a high ability coordinator. So those are things that we're putting in place, I think, to make a difference. Holding our staff accountable for high expectations, level of rigor with what they're doing within the classroom. We're being very intentional with how we're looking at that, and we're going to be very successful. United, we succeed. That's our motto this year.
Great, thank you.
That's me.
So do you want to do 103 questions and we just vote on 103?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fine. Why don't we open it up for questions specific to School 103? If you have questions for the network, perhaps we hold those for the end. Let's just focus on School 103 for the moment. Are there any questions for School 103 or regarding School 103? Let's start with board members in the room.
My questions were all about staffing for the population, and you nailed it without me having to ask. So nicely done.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, question on teacher retention, turnover, and certification. What is your retention, turnover, and percentage of those certified to teach what they're teaching in the classroom?
So our staff retention, teacher retention was one of the highest in our network. We were about 90% this past school year.
Okay.
And then our licensed teachers are, I think we're about 77% of our teachers are licensed to teach. We're doing better.
Wow.
We're working on it.
All right, thank you.
And I think the unlicensed part comes in where you're finding bilingual. And so we're having to help get certifications. So it's a longer process, but it's a great investment.
We have a good, broad, young first year, second year teachers and some veteran teachers. Some of those younger ones are transitioning to teaching permits, they're in programs, they're working. And some of our TAs that work for us now want to become teachers.
That's great. Good.
Cool.
Questions from board members online? Any questions regarding School 103?
I did one question, following up on what you were just talking about. Do you know what the rate of licensed teachers is for the overall public school population? I think that 70 sounds very good and very high to me.
I don't know the data for the state right now. Maybe James one. Sorry.
Violet, we're going to look that up and we're having Bea take a look at that and we'll report that out. Just
Okay.
as
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wondered, but it does sound really good. And then I think you touched on it, but there's been a lot of information so far today. I'm getting a little, but I wonder, okay, what are you doing to ensure that you talked about the one teacher who cried? So what kind of program do you do to make sure that the teachers are prepared to work with the populations that you are serving?
Yeah, so for the last, I would say 3.5 years, we have been implementing SIOP strategies, which are 8 different components to a sheltered instruction protocol. And those are good teaching strategies. Like component 1 is building strong lesson plans. Component 2 is building background with your scholars. So we've been slowly implementing those kind of strategies and how to build lesson plans and how to teach by using visual aids, anchor charts, writing stems, things like that we're going through and checking in classrooms within lesson plans when we're having conversations, when we're having the professional development activities. We have a little EL checklist that we go through when we do our coaching cycle visits. So it's just things that we're looking for that teachers have within their own classrooms.
And then how do you make all the students feel welcome from all these different places?
Oh, they love it. We do a lot of school-wide initiatives. We have skating parties. Well, they love seeing me every morning. How about that? It's the only job I can have. I get 150 hugs a day, but no, we get on the bus. We're very out, our leadership team and the staff, you can tell the kids really like being there. I think some of it we do a spin the wheel every couple of weeks where, they get us for their test scores, they get to do this, or skating parties. We're doing a Falcon family read competition right now. And I'm pretty competitive myself. So this runs all the way until January 17th, and the students are logging the number of minutes they're reading outside of school. So there's individual awards that they can get, and there's classroom awards. We do a lot on a regular basis of just trying to build up the culture within that building.
I also think it's important to mention as a network, we do a lot of multicultural activities for families. So we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We have right now a winter holiday event at the high school that all the elementary schools come and participate in. Probably the funniest thing was, we were one of our schools yesterday and they were singing Feliz Navidad, teaching it to other scholars. So just little things, we try to make sure that everyone feels welcome and it's an all-inclusive environment. All of our celebrations, we make sure fit everyone.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions from folks online? Okay, so what we will do is go ahead and vote on School 103. So the staff have recommended a 10-year charter renewal for School 103, Phelan Leadership Academy at School 103. So do I have a motion to accept staff recommendations for a 10-year renewal?
So moved.
So moved.
Great. I will take a movement and a second there, and we will do a roll vote. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So congratulations
Congrats,
to School
Congrats.
103.
Okay, before we move on, Ryan, our CFO, just texted me that Google says that 68% of Marion County teachers are licensed. The state average is 80%. Now take that with a grain of salt because it might have been Chat GPT. So
And there are differing laws for charter schools.
yes,
for
yeah,
the
different laws.
traditional public schools.
I will say anecdotally, 77% is good.
Mhm.
Like it's really difficult to get and keep licensed teachers, particularly in certain areas. The ML, special education, I mean, it's been like that for years, despite the legislature trying to fix the problem. That's just me on my
Yeah,
soapbox.
that's what I, no,
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
77% is great.
Okay, so we are in the home stretch. We're going to do
Yes,
two
we are.
two more schools.
So now we're gonna go to 48.
Right.
Everyone can move 48. Okay, 48. Well, I'm gonna talk real quick.
Oh. See, I'm trying to rush you along.
I know. So Lewis B. Russell School 48 is also an innovation network school. IPS approached PLA in 2019, but they approached them to make it an innovation network charter school. So it started out as a charter school. We granted them a charter that same year. They became an innovation school opening in an ICSB authorized innovation network school in 2021. In November, IPS voted to renew their contract again through 29/30. So they are, already renewed by IPS. They also have a predominantly low income and minority population. They have significantly more free and reduced price lunch students and minority students than the IPS average. Attendance rate has remained steady in the 80s. Chronic absenteeism is pretty high, but it's dropped. They're working on it. I mean, it's now at 65%. So 48 is pretty much is a pretty good success story as a turnaround. When PLA came in to take it over, again, it was performing terribly. It was one of the worst schools in the district. And basically they've improved in both ELA and math, basically every year they've been there. In 2024, for example, math proficiency was almost 19%, which is 10% higher than the IPS average. And let's see, and ELA was at 12%, which is slightly higher than the IPS average. Now, again, keep in mind, they also have a way higher average of EL students. So the IRE performance doubled. It was pretty bad in 2021, 34%. It is now close to 65%, both in 23 and 24, which is higher, 9% higher than the IPS average. So 48's pretty good success story as far as an innovation turnaround school. Again, as part of their innovation network renewal recommendations, and I cited the report there, there's a whole host of metrics by which 48 is outperforming the LEA. So good on PLA 48. They really, I mean, they've been a really, from where they started, it's been a journey. They're really knocking it out of the park now. Again, from a financial standpoint, while I list like the assets and liabilities and all that stuff in here, it's not super relevant to the school's actual financial standing. One thing I will say is they're one of the smallest, if not the smallest PLA schools, around 250 students, which is a shame considering how they're performing. And they're like right down the street from me, so I've got a special spot in my heart for them. But one of the reasons is that IPS messed with the bus zone zoning changes, which and they can describe this, but the zone like goes in a weird direction. So like these kids who are really close are actually being bused elsewhere. So they're trying to figure out ways to counteract that. I don't believe the IPS has been super interested in changing it back, but the zoning is really weird now. So they're really trying to manage that. That's something that they've put a lot more effort in recruitment and marketing and things to try to make up for that. But that's a real shame. So that's it.
Great.
That's all I got.
Any questions for James before we shift over to the staff? Okay, well, we would welcome you to come on up.
I'll introduce the leaders. Lawrence Courtney, who I have to brag about because with over 20 PLA schools every year, there's one principal of the year network-wide, and Lawrence Courtney won last year, so Indianapolis finally got the trophy for the first time. We're excited. We also have Megan Smith, who is an assistant principal, who has been with me since we became Innovation, started as a teacher. And Holly Clark, who we brag about stealing from Avon, who has been a huge asset as a coach. So, Mr. Courtney, if you and your staff want to take on.
All right. I don't need to do the introduction of my leaders, since Ms. Palmer did that for me. I'm not gonna keep you long. I know it's been a long day already. One of the things I'm just gonna point out along with my team is we have bullet points in each section that you probably want to hear about. So with me, I'm one of the things that's special about 48. As you heard, it was kind of a school that had no life in it. So when Ms. Farmer and Mr. Phelan asked me to bring life to it, that's my specialty. So I had to identify who I could bring along on this ride with me. Well, I identified these two young ladies who are heavily committed in the lives of kids, veterans. We all come from different walks of life. We look different, but theirs was similar like mine, where we were first generation kids in our family, go to college and graduate. So I knew they were committed. And so I've kind of deemed roles for them on a daily basis, but the reason why we are successful, it's not me, it's them. They took my vision and they applied it to everybody else, right? So like, again, with one of the things that's helped us out is we kind of went to a looping system, right? One of the things I may have found out and we looked at was, instead of our kids starting over every single year with a new teacher, and had that teacher having to learn their likes and dislikes, let's go looping for 2 years, and then every 3 years, they'll start it back over, right? What we found out is the reason why our test scores started rocketing up was because teachers didn't have to start over no more. Familiarity was there. We can still continue to get the best out of our kids going to the next grade, right? And the parents were committed to that. They saw it. So that helped us out. You know, when you talk about, we're big on data, these two are big on data. So one of the things we did was, let's promote data all through this building. Let's have competitions. Let's get our kids excited about who can be the top students in math, who can be the top students in ELA, right? And so any and everywhere you walk in our building, you will see that. And we have trophies to hand out every week, right? And they take pride in that now, because they want to be the best. So, you know, I kind of, like I said, I leave it up to them and their ideas of how do we keep going to the next level. Let's make it make sense, right? Staff retention. Well, the reason why it's so high for us is our teachers see that we believe in them. We've given them autonomy to be creative. We told them, you own this, so make it special. One of the biggest things that I learned growing up, you know, young Black kid in the neighborhood, I found that I got excited when my teacher saw who I was. He or she didn't look past me. I wasn't another number. They actually knew who I was. That's what we bring in our school. You walk in, we know every kid is walking in and out. The new kids that come, well, it's a challenge because we get them coming from everywhere. But one of the things that we do to make it special is any kid that comes to our building, they have to sit down with us and our leadership team, because we want the parents to know who we are, what we're about, why we're going to invest in your child, but we need you to invest with us. And so we build a report right then and there, right? So I'll let them kind of tell you the extra part to it, and then if you have questions, fire away.
Hi, I'm Megan Smith. I'm the assistant principal. As Mr. Courtney said, we have really built a lot since we've been at 48 over the last 5 years. And those relationships with parents are really important to us because if we don't have the buy-in from the parents, then we're at a disadvantage to having the buy-in from those scholars. So we are really big on, like he said, those enrollment meetings are really powerful. That gives us an opportunity to get to know what the scholar likes about school, what do they dislike, where are their challenges, where do we need to meet them in order to help them succeed, and it helps us give the teachers, you know, what they need to help those scholars to be successful. We do a lot of community events for our families. We try to do at least once a month, but occasionally, you know, we have multiple things going on in the span of just 1 month. We have you know, pastries with parents to get information with to parents, but it's an informal session. So we're really just having conversations and getting to know, you know, getting to know our families on a more intimate level. We do, you know, the big school-wide events like Fall Fest and Winter Wonderland, which we're doing tonight. And so that always that's one of my favorite things because our families like to see us outside of the academic setting. We do a lot for our teachers. We really try to, you know, support them as best they can. Like Mr. Courtney said, it's really a family feel. And so we really, the autonomy given back to teachers helps them to be their best for our scholars. Data-driven instruction is our big thing in our building. Like Mr. Courtney said, you can walk around and see data everywhere. And Holly's going to talk a little bit about that to you, how we use that to kind of drive where we're going academically. Hi, my name is Holly Clark, and I'm the instructional coach at 48. Data-driven instruction is vital to having these scores grow like they have been growing. And to see that continued, we have instituted a data wall with every scholar's individual data for all three beginning, middle, end of the year. We meet in PLCs weekly to either talk about reading and math, and then looking at those weekly common formative assessments that we give and seeing how we can help students grow. And that data is put into our small groups that teachers have in classrooms and the instructional or intervention times that we have daily. We've also looked at attendance data because we know kids have to be at school in order to grow. So we also have a big attendance board out in the middle of the hallway, right by the restrooms, where every class goes to the restroom. And every day we hear kids talk about it. Oh man, we hit 89, or yay, we finally hit 90. So that little bit of competition, I think, has increased our students' awareness of the importance of attendance. And we also know that we have the buy-ins from parents, but also from the community. So we are super lucky to have many great valued community supporters that help us reach all of our goals.
Thank you. Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, just the last thing. I think one of the things that kind of helps us now with our parents, because, you know, when we took over, they didn't know who we were. Of course, change can be scary. So, you know, after a year or so, our parents really saw how much we were committed to their kids and to them. As you know, the events that we have now almost 100% participation. They come out, they want to be a part of it. One of the things we do during that time, we talk about, as you heard, the next upcoming event, but more so what we do. A lot of people aren't real too swift when it comes to reading data, right? They don't understand it. Without sounding kind of crazy, we break it down in layman's terms. But we want our parents to know where we stand as a school, what our goal is, and what we're trying to do for the next year when it comes to spring assessment. So that way they have an idea, and then they work even more with us to try to accomplish those goals. So just a little tip.
That's incredible. Thank you. So let's shift to questions if you all would stay there. Why don't I start with members of the board who are here in the room? Questions from either of you regarding Phelan at School 48?
I have a quick clarifying question. That's probably my inability to read James's great notes. So let me put that out there. I think I will say, I do not know you, sir, but I've sat in your shoes as a founder and head of school of a Indianapolis charter school as well. So I get struggles with enrollment. I get it all. But what drew my attention was the potential of 7 staff reductions and a teacher to student ratio of 12-1. And I'm not certain if we're highlighting 12-1 as this is our model, this is a good thing, or if we're saying if enrollment does not increase, then we are going to be forced to make tricky conversations about staff and end up with a lower reduction. In other words, is this an intentional part of our model? And if so, how do we sustain it? Or is this what we're inheriting and we're trying to juggle with enrollment and finances?
So I'm gonna compare it to James's trying to explain the way they do the
Yes.
financials at
Yes.
PLA.
Okay.
Very similar. We did not cut any staff last year. We have no plans to cut staff this year. I don't know if you can see that 48 was awarded a $3 million SIG grant.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of positions added that were just teacher assistants that then the plan would be through philanthropy or certification. They decide to stay. If they move on, we don't backfill those positions, but we
Yeah.
have no intention to cut any of the positions. The student ratio is close. It is no longer 12-1. What is your average class size? 20, 22? But we had to add a lot of staff because multiple special ed teachers, multiple ELO. We have added a STEM room with the grant. So there's a STEM teacher, so there's a lot of extra. So it's not a very fair representation. But again, there are no plans to have a reduction in force in all the years since I've been here, which I partnered with PLA when we started. We've never had to RIF anyone. So thank God for Mr. Phelan and his philanthropy.
Appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
I should say that, and the way student teacher ratio is calculated in this is in a financial sense, it's literally the number of instructional staff divided by the ADM. So it's not classroom size.
Okay.
It's like.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
So her point about all the extras is what's driving.
Okay, I'm with you.
Questions?
Thanks.
Yes, please. The whole notion of getting granted a charter is an opportunity for a turnaround permission slip. And the whole notion of a charter renewal is a stay around permission slip, right? And so would you please, as a leadership team, describe the difference between turnaround leadership and what you intend with stay around leadership if granted the renewal? And just as a challenge to you, please don't say it's the same thing.
Well, I'll go first. What I would say is, our goal of going forward, renewed, is we saw where we were, right? As we first came in. So now it's taking everything we've learned over the last 3 years, 4 years worth, and it's to say, how does education look even better for our kids in a new manner? How do we educate them even more? How do we get them to come to school even more? How do we get more productivity out of them? How do we make them more proficient when it comes to state assessments? All of these things are what we're looking at now, if we're renewed, to say, how do we keep making PLA go this way instead of this way?
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Questions from members of the board online? Okay, seeing none, we can move to a vote. So the staff have recommended a 10-year charter renewal for Phelan Leadership Academy at 48. So I would accept a motion to approve staff recommendations and renew the charter for 10 years. Any motion?
So moved.
Great, we have a movement and a second. I will go through roll call votes. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I too am a yes. So congratulations to Phelan Leadership Academy.
Good job, guys. Keep it up. Okay. Last but not least, James and Rosemary Killen High School, and I do have to take a really quick aside, say you do need to visit during Christmas. It is absolutely bonkers in there, what they do. There are like, how many inflatables?
Oh my God, like 24, but the entire ceiling in the halls.
And
is
it's like, so they have all the students from all the schools come in and do a Christmas thing. It's really cool. Like I've never seen anything like it. I wanted to go. Anyway, so other than Christmas, JRPLH is originally approved in 2019, so they're another one of that pandemic era authorizations. Opened in 2021, first renewal request. We are recommending a 10-year renewal. Just some of the data, low income minority population, higher than the IPS average. In their first 3 years of operation, they graduated, I think, a total of 207 students. Their 3-year grad percentage was 81, rose from 65 roughly to 83. And again, while 24 has not been released, we think it's going to be around 86 or 87%. So it's risen every year. So SAT, bringing me back to my SAT discussion, the proficiency has been low. The EBRW rose from 7.1 to 7.3 to 10, so it's increasing, but it's still about half of what IPS average is. Math has also been low, very low. They're now at 2% students proficiency in 2024, which is lowest among IPS high schools. Again, I'm not going to reiterate why I'm not entirely sure SAT is something we should pay a whole lot of attention to, but 100% of their graduates apply to college. It's because they require them to apply to Ivy Tech, every single student. So obviously, none of the SAT, they don't require SAT scores, as far as I know, and maybe they can clarify this. I don't think any of the students, at least that they know of at this point, has applied to a school that requires an SAT. So it's a struggle. They need to improve, obviously. And they can tell us how they're doing that. But, and they describe in their app a lot of different strategies that they're working on for their population, including, before school SAT prep classes. Really it's getting the students used to taking that kind of a test. So with that, I will say we have no financial health, very, very similar. Their let's see, their enrollment is high. It was like, sorry, 587. I got a lot of pages. So they're close to max, I think. Max is 600, they're 587. So they've grown quite a bit in 4 years. The financial projections have the same sort of minor staffing reductions. It's very much the same that Nicole just described, more of sort of a right sizing kind of thing. And again, as a result of the networks model, very thin positive revenues. And with that, I will say we're recommending a 10-year renewal, and I will let them come up and talk. I realize we're pushing it to 1, and we lose Violet at 1. So
Okay, I'm gonna go fast. Mr. Lane, you wouldn't mind joining me? Oh, you're good. I did also want to add about the staffing. I don't know that other schools do this, but we do something called flex teachers. So we hire teachers and in essence, they start on the bench. That way, if someone quits or is pregnant and has to leave, we slide a teacher in. So that also, skews the numbers. But for JRP, before I even get into JRP, I want to thank ICSB. Your team has been amazing for us to work with. When we took on Promise Prep, they had a different authorizer, and we said we absolutely have got to have everyone with ICSB. So thank you, all of you, for everything you do. Enrollment in JRP, high, 100% staff retention this year. I think it was maybe 89 to 92 the year before. They are currently looking to join the IHSAA. We're just needing one more sport in the spring. We're incredibly competitive. I talked about our efforts to include all cultures in the community. JRP is really a staple on the Far East Side, where everything else seems to be closing and leaving. We continue to grow and build. We have a new partnership with Skilled Indy. I'm sure Mr. Lane will address it. We also have currently gained a partnership with IU Indy. So every scholar that graduates from JRP gets direct admit into their school. We have a partnership now with the Butler Founders College. So we will be the first group piloting that program at Butler this year. Incredibly proud of our scholars that have gone the career path, but also the college path. because they're still there. The first group are now juniors and they're going strong. And just also want to highlight the way we grow leaders at Phelan. So Mr. Lane started as a teacher. Megan Smith started as a teacher. Mr. Reimer and Mr. Courtney started as assistant principals. So we love grabbing people, and we really feel like that helps keep our staff, our culture in the community. So I will turn it over to Mr. Lane. I explained I kind of have a dual role, serving as executive director and also the principal. So look at it almost as a co-principal relationship, but Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for having us today. Touch on a couple things that have already been mentioned, but then kind of what we're doing moving forward to try to not only address some of the things that we can do better, but also even improve on things that we're already doing well. So first thing, graduation rate, as was mentioned, has grown a lot. But as that ELL population, scholar population continues to grow, one thing that's been great is that we have brought on new ELL staff members. So 3 EL licensed teachers and 3 EL paraprofessionals. And that's been great, not only culture wise, because those ELL scholars feel welcome in the building, but also in the classroom. They feel supported as they help out, not only in our English and math classrooms, but in their electives and in the science classrooms and the social studies classrooms. So those ELL scholars, kind of has been mentioned before, that word spreads not only amongst each other, but to their families in the community. And that gets the enrollment numbers up. They feel welcome culture wise, and they feel supported in the classroom, which is great. But what we've done this year, and what we're going to continue to try to do, is there's some of the seniors who are on track to graduation. So my thought was, well, how can we utilize those seniors who have kind of gone through what our younger kids have gone through? How can we utilize them in the classroom? Let's schedule a peer tutoring class for them built into their schedule, and go down to the 9th and 10th grade classrooms, English and math, and support those kids who they were 2-3 years before, which would have been great. Peer-to-peer tutoring. Sometimes we get tired of listening to us adults, so it's nice when they can go down there and kind of help out those scholars as well. That's also been beneficial when we've made initiatives towards SAT prep. So those scores haven't been where we want them to be, but that doesn't mean they can't get there eventually. So again, utilizing those seniors to come down and help at lower grades, because even though they're not taking it in 9th and 10th grade, they will be taking it later on. So helping those classrooms then. We also have our high ability coordinator working with the teachers to understand what the SAT is and how can they provide that SAT prep for those scholars who will be taking the SAT. It's changed a lot recently as far as it being implemented as our new state test, but then also transferring over to a computerized test. Where before, I'm sure everybody in here took it on paper pencil. So finding ways to attack the SAT the way it's given now, we have to understand it as educators before we can expect the scholars to excel. Attendance wise, as mentioned, it's good, but it can get better. So now every 20 school days, we run a report. Anyone who's got 19 out of 20 days attended, 95%, they get put into a raffle. And when the raffle, they get called down, recognized, amongst the whole school, and get a gift card for their great attendance. So that's something that's even boosted up higher and will hopefully continue to boost. Our career pathways, we partnered out with Skilled US, which is a PLA partner that focuses on adult education, but now they've kind of helped us at the high school as well. So they've helped us create a new welding partnership. So we have 7 scholars going through a welding career pathway, and they're going to come out this year. They're all senior. Actually, I'm sorry, 1 junior, 6 seniors. They're going to come out with 2 certifications, job ready to go, in a career that I think anybody would be thankful to have. Cosmetology barbering. This year, we just started welcoming some of our scholars from the elementaries to come in, get their hair cut from our scholars who have now felt comfortable doing that for them. So they get their hair done. Some of the girls get their fingernails done, and they come out beaming, because now they're going to go home and show all this off. And that's due to the scholars that we have in our program doing that for them. Entrepreneurship, doing job fairs. They create a business. They build that within the classroom, and then we have a whole hallway dedicated to them where they can set up their little business booth and sell products they may have made, or offer services that may be able to offer outside of school. Computer science, Skilled US has computers ready for the adults who may be going through their courses through adult ed. Well, they need those computers set up. Well, let's utilize, it's actually happening just today, our computer science scholars who are setting up those computers for Skilled US for the adults to use. Education careers, they're providing tutoring at our elementary schools as well as day early learning, which is just up the street from us. CNA, they go to clinicals at a nursing home not too far away, and hearing some of the stories they come back, it's kind of an eye-opening experience because they're doing some things that they heard about that they might be doing, but until you kind of get in there and do it, it's a whole different beast. So they come back with a whole different level of maturity, which is really cool to see. So yeah, that's some of the things we are doing and some of the things that I think we can even get better at doing. And I'm just happy to be along for the journey and continue to create those initiatives that we hopefully will improve each and every year.
I just have one more thing to add. Normally, we're notorious for bringing a room full of scholars. But we're trying really hard knowing how our scores are not where we want to be. But they provided letters. I'm sure you guys got them electronically. The binder was this thick. And so that's really important to me that our scholars took the time. It's not a requirement, but if you want to submit, and I know that most of you guys were at our community night for public comment and the auditorium was packed. So I appreciate the fact that the people we're investing in are invested in us as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, we did receive the public comments, and yes, we got them electronically, but they were incredible to read, really encouraging to hear kids advocate for their school and for themselves in that way.
I
So
finished at some of the grammar.
it's the heart. It's the heart. Okay, so we will shift over to questions. Let me start with the folks in the room. Any questions for James and Rosemary Phelan High School?
I do not. Just one. It's a real tough one. Real tough one.
Then I'm gonna let Troy.
Absolutely. Step right up. So in terms of these math scores on the ACT, 0 to 2% and stuff like that, wow. So my question to you as a leadership team, because what you're offering is amazing and your students are fabulous, is this math thing a matter of student skills, student efficacy, or student willingness? And if in fact it doesn't get turned around quick, is that a matter of adult skills, efficacy, and willingness? And I'm going to ask that you not answer it today. I'd just like you to talk about it the next time you get together. And what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna ask a question like that, you better hit them all up. Not just the last one.
Okay, questions from folks online? Okay, I don't see any, so we will move to a vote. The staff have recommended a full 10-year charter renewal for Phelan High School. So do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations and approve a 10-year renewal?
So moved.
Great, have a movement and a second. I will go through roll vote. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Jositis.
Yes.
Board Member Schultz.
Yes.
Board Member Green.
Yes.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So congratulations to the folks from Phelan High School. So we have just one more item on our agenda, and that is for the staff to provide any updates or any other business that the staff want to share with the board.
I don't think we have any updates.
Okay, perfect. Well, then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I can say this.
Yeah, please.
It's quick. Appreciate, again, everything that went into this. Only thing I want to say is, sometimes this is the only time you really get to see us.
Yeah.
Like I've always told everybody, I would love if you come and see us in person.
That'd be great.
I want you to see what we're putting into our schools, our kids, our parents, our community on a daily basis. So you really get to see what we telling you is what we're really trying to make happen. So feel free to come to our school anytime. People on the screen anytime you would like.
Thank you so much for that invitation. We will take you up on that.
Come during Christmas. I'm telling you.
It would be great to do a tour. I was thinking that earlier when we were listening. It would be great to do a tour of all of our, we probably won't do them all the same day, but we.
Yeah, maybe we can work with you, James, and your
Yeah,
staff to
anytime you're in
arrange
town, let us
visit.
know and we will absolutely schedule you a tour.
Right. We'll do an old fashioned bus tour. Sounds great. Okay, so on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion
Do I-
to adjourn.
Do I have to do a roll call to
Yes,
adjourn?
you do.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so we have a second. Okay, I will second, and I'm going to roll call to adjourn. Board Member Hawkins.
Yes, and happy holidays for everyone. Bye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for your time. Board Member Jositis.
Yes, and Happy New Year, everybody, as well.
Thank you so
Thanks, Michael.
much. Board Member Schultz.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Board Member Green.
Yes, and happy holidays.
Thank you, sir.
Board Member Donlin.
Yes, thank
And
you.
thank you for joining us
Well, thanks for
today.
having
This
me
was
on.
a marathon run and you did great. Thank you. And I too adjourn. Thank you so much to everybody, schools, staff, and all the board members for a great day. Thank you very much. That was a long one, but we did it. Seven. That's
Detailed reports. Yes. And what the folks are doing, it's so many kids, so many lives saved, differences made.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
Taking care of me as a new kid on the block.
No, I mean, that's good questions. I sometimes historically we've had questions that I don't think were super helpful.
I told him about that, but less questions, more speeches.
Yeah.
Were they okay? I mean, were they
Yeah.
affirming him, trying to tee him up?
It gives them an opportunity for them to like actually.
Get folks who are appointed who don't believe in charters generally.
Yes.
And so they tend to.
Pontificate, you know, and actually, that's a great. He was appointed by someone who is not necessarily a charter.
Oh, he's wonderful.
But he is
Really great. Yeah, it's great. We have a wonderful board. It's really,
Great.
it is.
Try to find some more members.
She's been busy. She's been busy. She's busy. We'll get her there.
Yes.
She's now overseeing higher ed too, so.
So everything, technically, he's over us. I had a conversation about that because I'm not sure that's actually. I mean, I can report to her, but I'm not sure if he has any authority to do anything.
Dr. Dunner?
Yeah, that's the new structure.
Oh.
That's the Secretary of Education. It's over us and CHE. And IDOE and SBOE. Technically.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
It's nice seeing you back. Take care. Yes, you too. And happy new year. It was great. Staff did. You too. I appreciate your presence. Oh my gosh, of course. Of course, of course. I'm good. How are you? Yeah, almost weekly.
Thank you.
I figured out how to do just getting back the same day. That's like. I think my stamina.
Yeah, what's he now? Figurehead kind of. So you might phase out. If since your next adventure is probably full insurance. Healthcare.
Baking, something.
Yeah. Excellent. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yes, I would say.
Nine, yeah. IT, the ones that.
Yeah, that's all. My kids drive by. It's not really nice.
So come on, I get the coffee, and walk around, see.
Like, so it'll be Kevin's drive. Yeah, I mean, it's like really 10 walks away from that. 41st century, so like that.
I'll tell you, this is me every day, I'm connected. I love it.
Yeah. That's great.
All right.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Okay.
You guys have a good holiday.
But I didn't go back out there.
Thank you, Yeah.
Hey, are you guys officially done with your meeting?
Well, nice meeting you again. Yes, yes.
Yeah. That was a lot. I'm just, that's well.
Are you guys completely done with your meeting for today?
Yes. Thank you all. Is that next year?
Well, can we provide food for that and probably do it over 2 days?
Cheers.
Here.
Nice to meet you. I really enjoyed the.
Oh, yeah. How was your? Actually, it's 3:30 and I'm looking at That's kind of how I was, sometimes starting back. Literally, it's like classical music, just to say, singing and talking. Oh,
Especially when it starts.
Yes.
I know, right?
No,
You will not. I thought you would not, that's not wrong, you better.
What?
You will not, you said something wrong.
I'm gonna.
Look.
And you're wrong.
Yes.
Thank you.
Safe travel.
Thank you, safe travels.